Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Kotlin 1.4 online event. My name is Hadi Hariri, and I'm joining you from sunny south of Spain, although it's not very sunny today. Even if it were, I'm in a room with the blinds down, so I wouldn't know if it's sunny. And I have the pleasure to be accompanied today with my colleague, Sebastian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sebastian, developer advocate here at JetBrains as well in Hadi's team. And I'm joining you from Munich, which is mostly cloudy currently, but you can't see that because of all the artificial lighting around me.
You know, back in the old days when I used to fly, Munich always used to have the sun. I mean, there was always sun in the sky. And then when you would reach Munich, you would see this layer of cloud, and then you would go down and you're like, okay, I've arrived at Munich. But trust me, Seb, that there is sun somewhere.
Okay, I'll just have to take your word for it, because at least from my position right here, I can't see it.
Oh, there definitely is. But anyway, let's talk about our wonderful event that's happening. So we are here on day 1 of 4 of the COA. Okay, I told you that we don't need a teleprompter. What's COA?
It's the Kotlin online event, Hadi. You should know this by now.
Yes. Okay. Yes, we're here on day 1 of 4 of the Kotlin online event. So tell us a little bit about this event. What's happening, Seb?
Well, we have 4 days packed with Kotlin content. And today we have the pleasure of taking you through all the content that is about Kotlin in general. So we'll have a keynote, we'll have a community overview, talks on language features, tooling achievements, and we'll even have a look into the further future of Kotlin. So yeah, this is going to be probably a good couple of hours of Kotlin content. So we're going to be here for a while, grab some snacks or grab some beverages in preparation for all this content. I know I have my Kotlin cup with me.
Oh, okay. I don't. Sorry. Can we restart? I don't have my Kotlin swag with me. But is this, just for folks to know, this isn't going to happen all at the same time, is it? I mean, over the next 4 days, we're going to have afternoon and morning events, right?
So we're going to have this split over a couple of blocks, essentially, all that kind of have their own little theme. You can see the schedule both on the Kotlin Lang website as well as on the links that are in the social media.
Yeah, and we've got an all-star cast for you, cast with a K. Oh, no, never mind. I'm not going to do that joke anymore. No.
But I feel like maybe this is a great point to congratulate our community to have kind of outgrown this obsession with the letter K. We see a lot of great libraries and community efforts out there that don't actually contain a K at all. We think that's very impressive.
I think that's a very good point, and I think they should keep it up with a C. Okay, never mind. Anyway, yeah. So I think it's time to give enough of us blabbering, and let's give way to the keynote, right? Who's it going to be by?
So this is going to be by all of our colleagues from the Kotlin team who have done great work to release Kotlin 1.4, and which we're here to celebrate. What?
Hold on. All of our colleagues, there's like 100+ people on the team. Like, they're all going to take part?
Well, you know, I would like to believe that they all had their part in this keynote as well, but it's a selection of them, which we'll present here. Okay. But I think it's best if we'll just let them introduce themselves and kind of take over from here.
Absolutely. So let's enjoy the talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. If you want to know the latest news of where Kotlin stands today and what awaits us in the future, you've tuned in to the right talk. Today, I will be presenting with my colleagues from the Kotlin team, Egor Tolstoy, Head of Product Management, Stanislav Erokhin, Head of Development, Svetlana Isakova, the Lead Developer Advocate for Kotlin, Roman Yalysarov, Head of the Language Research Team, and Anastasia Kapanina, the Product Manager for the Kotlin Multi-Platform Mobile team. Together, we will give you an overview of all things Kotlin today. All we have today is 30 minutes, and there is a lot to tell. So we will be referring you to other talks that will cover in depth the topics that we're only touching upon. Note those links, and we will be calling them out. As you know, Kotlin 1.4 was released on August 17th this year. I hope most of you have already upgraded. The feedback that we've been hearing so far is generally positive, and where it is not, I hope that our 1.4.10 and 0.20 updates will be fixing your issues. If you run into any problems, please feel free to report them to us. We'll be really happy to help. Meanwhile, our team is working on the future of Kotlin. We're on the new 6-month release cadence now. So Kotlin 1.5 is planned for the spring 2021. It makes the release cycle shorter, so expect fewer features, fewer changes. But in exchange, the release will come sooner. It will be better for everyone. For these upcoming months, we'll keep our focus on quality and performance on the one hand, and on making Kotlin shine on the server side and multi-platform mobile development on the other. My colleagues will tell you more about it in just a minute, but first, let's look at the bigger picture. As some of you heard me say before, we think of Kotlin as more than just a language. It's not only a spec, a set of rules, a compiler, a toolchain, an IDE, or a set of libraries. It's much more than that. Kotlin is an ecosystem that starts with people. Kotlin is us, all of us. You, me, my colleagues at JetBrains, and everyone who reads and writes Kotlin code for work, as a learning project, or as a hobby. You can say it's everyone who can complain about the slow builds or the ternary operator. By the way, we're working on that. I mean the builds. The Kotlin ecosystem is all these people sharing the same ideas. How we think about code, what abstractions we use, how we express our thoughts. And of course, we all use the same software. Libraries, the compiler, the IDE, and so on. And Kotlin is us, people, connected by ideas and software. Egor will tell you more on how the Kotlin ecosystem is doing and what trends we see there. Welcome, Egor.
As Andrei has said, the Kotlin ecosystem is all about the people, those who use Kotlin for solving their tasks and those who also give something back. Kotlin owes much of its success to the enthusiasts who evangelize it in communities, share their experience with teams, and lead the effort to introduce it to the codebase of industry projects. And we are very proud to see that the number of people using Kotlin is constantly increasing. It means that both the enthusiasts and the people they're influencing love the language. In the last 12 months, nearly 6 million people have edited Kotlin code in their IDE at least once, which is 1.5 times more than last year and 6 times more than the year before. But there is one more metric which is important for Kotlin, the number of active users. It shows us the number of developers who are using Kotlin professionally. An active user is a developer who writes Kotlin code regularly. In our case, it means that they wrote some code both this month and in the previous month. And this number is also very impressive. We have more than 1.2 million active developers this year, which is 50% higher than last year. Sounds great, right? But the core of Kotlin community consists of developers who not only actively use Kotlin, but also give something back. There are lots of types of contributions that make you a part of our community. It can be making pull requests to the Kotlin toolchain, reporting issues in our issue tracker, giving talks at conferences, or even open sourcing your Kotlin code. These are just a few examples of the active members of our community. They are awesome. And we are happy to see that the community is growing together with our user base. For example, on Stack Overflow, there are more and more questions and answers about Kotlin every year. Each new question posted on Stack Overflow helps not just the author, but everyone who visits it, and that can be hundreds or thousands of people. Nearly 200,000 new repositories were created on GitHub this year, with Kotlin as a primary language, which is twice as many as the year before. Over 30,000 Kotlin developers are now exchanging knowledge and supporting each other on Slack and Reddit, and more than 90,000 people now follow our official Twitter account for tips, tricks, and announcements. With over 200 user groups worldwide, the Kotlin community is thriving and growing. If you want to know more about how to become a part of the community and help the ecosystem, visit my talk later today that is called Staying in Touch, where I will provide some hints and tips about contributing to Kotlin. We are happy to be a part of the community ourselves, and one of our recent investments is enhancing the performance and quality of Kotlin. We believe that a great developer experience is key to the happiness and productivity of both individual developers and their teams. I'm sure each of you has at one time or another experienced the perfect state of flow. That wonderful state of being fully immersed in solving a problem, where you're deeply focused on the task at hand and actually enjoying the process. I believe that the primary task of a great tooling is to help a developer get in the flow state and stay there for as long as possible. The worst enemy of the flow state is sudden interruptions, like exceptions or performance problems. Just imagine, you're immersed in a complex task, building a beautiful castle of abstractions in your mind, when suddenly the syntax highlighting stops working and your code turns red. The best case scenario is you'll spend some time fixing the problem and then get back to work. But the worst case is your workday is ruined and you can't focus anymore. That's one of the reasons why quality and performance are key priorities for Kotlin, and I'm very proud of the results we've been able to achieve in this area. We've significantly reduced the time it takes for code completion suggestions to appear. Based on the data from our recent releases, the number of cases where the completion window appears really fast has reached 70%, and the number of slower cases has been significantly reduced. Besides auto-completion, we have also worked on improving the highlighting speed. The most impressive results were achieved for large Kotlin files. When you open such a file for the first time, you see its content highlighted up to 3 times faster than it was before. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We fixed numerous UI freezes, memory leaks, and performance problems, and launched new IDE features to improve the developer experience. There is actually a lot to cover on the recent IDE improvements, so we have a dedicated talk from Anton Yalyshev later today all about quality and performance in IntelliJ IDEs. It's a great talk, you definitely don't want to miss it. Performance and quality isn't a one-time activity for the Kotlin team. We consider it key to the happiness and productivity of Kotlin developers, so we are committed to making it great. We have lots of plans for the upcoming months that will improve the overall developer experience with both IDE and build tools. But in the long run, we plan to drastically improve the performance of code completion and syntax highlighting by switching the Kotlin plugin to a new compiler frontend. It's a complex project, and we are currently in the early stages of implementing its first prototype. But we believe that it will be a game changer. I know that you're excited. So now I will hand you over to Stanislav Erokhin, the head of development for Kotlin, who will tell you more about our new compiler.
Build speed is one of the biggest concerns for our users, and increasing it is really important to us. We've delivered different incremental improvements over the years, but as you know, we've decided to address this issue fundamentally and rewrite the core of the Kotlin compiler. The obvious goal for the new compiler is for it to be really fast, but we also wanted to unify all the supported platforms and be pluggable, meaning it will provide the API for compiler extensions. We started working on it some time ago, and we are now ready to share some of our achievements. The Kotlin compiler consists of 2 parts, the frontend and the backends. The frontend takes the source code, analyzes it, finds the exact functions, property, or class to be called in each case, and calculates the types of all the variables, expressions, and so on. Then the backends generate executables for different target platforms. In the current compiler, the frontend accounts for more than 70% of the compilation time. In the new compiler, we've significantly optimized the frontend, and it's now 4.5 times faster than in the old compiler. Also, as Egor mentioned before, the IDE uses the same frontend for its work, so the performance of the IDE will be drastically improved. This year, our goal is to get the new Kotlin compiler to correctly compile itself. This part is not ready for production just yet, and it still needs a year or so to reach the alpha state. In the meanwhile, we are bringing you other parts of the new compiler, the new type inference algorithm and new backends. Kotlin 1.4 comes with new type inference algorithm. It solves a lot of issues involving inconsistent behavior and makes evolving the language easier. In short, this new algorithm makes it possible to implement new language features that we previously couldn't. The new type inference implementations support complicated scenarios involving code that exploit generic functions, smart cast, callable reference, or delegated properties. You can learn about it in more detail and see code examples in Svetlana Isakova talk, New Language Features. The second change we want to highlight is our move to unify Kotlin backends. Historically, the first two target platforms for Kotlin were JVM and JS, and the backends were implemented independently of each other and didn't share much logic. Because of that, some language features required double the work to support, as they had to be implemented in the JVM backend and in the JS backend. With Kotlin Native, we started working on unified backend internal representation of the source code that nowadays is used in JVM and JS-based backends. This way, with a unified backend infrastructure, we can implement features that fix bugs only once. But that isn't all. The new infrastructure allows us to significantly improve the size of the resulting binary in JS-IR backend by up to 2 times compared with the old JS backend. And it allows Google to make Jetpack Compose as a plugin for JVM IR backend. Right now, both IR backends, Kotlin JVM and Kotlin JS, are in alpha status. And we want to take into account all your feedback before making them the new default. So please try them out. And that's all I had to tell you about our new compiler. Let's move further and discuss what's new in a variety of Kotlin feature areas. And we'll start with Roman Elizarov, who will talk about one of Kotlin's most important applications, Kotlin for server-side.
Kotlin was born as a JVM language, had naturally encompassed Android, and then spread onto the other platforms. All things JVM are still a big focus of the language, and that means the domain where JVM shines, server-side applications. JVM is the largest server-side platform in the world, employing millions of developers. More than half of the JVM server developers use Spring, the most popular server-side JVM framework. It nicely pairs with Kotlin concise syntax and various core Kotlin features like properties. Thanks to interoperability, Kotlin is not only used by new projects, but it is also being gradually adopted by big projects. Working on a mixed Java Kotlin project is a breeze. As the Java language evolves, we're committed to providing support for all the latest Java language features that come out. So rest assured that seamless integration with upcoming Java records and seal classes is high on our Kotlin language design priority list. We're also keeping track of potential future developments like Project Valhalla and Project Loom to ensure that you'll be able to use Kotlin with the most recent versions of JVM and integrate with the modern Java code. In Kotlin 1.4, we've closed one big feature request that blocked a number of server-side Java developers from Kotlin adoption. It used to be a case that only interfaces defined in Java could be subject to SAM conversion, allowing for easy usage with Kotlin lambdas. Now Kotlin functional interfaces, marked with the fun keyword, can enjoy the same benefits, making it easier to convert your Java code to Kotlin. Many advanced Kotlin features, like coroutines and delegated properties, were designed to simplify repeating hard-to-support patterns of code that often appear in the server-side code. Coroutines in particular fit especially well to work with the reactive framework on the server, making developers more productive, producing code that has less programming language ceremony and more business domain substance. The release of Coroutines debugger in Kotlin 1.4 adds to this story. There are a lot of major JVM server-side frameworks that you can naturally use with Kotlin. We've recently released a dedicated web page to highlight the productive server-side development with Kotlin. There you can find links to Kotlin tutorials and examples for all of them. There is one server-side framework that is developed from ground up in Kotlin by the Kotlin team at JetBrains, and it is being used by key JetBrains products like Space. This framework is called Cater. It fully embraces Kotlin design philosophy and is based entirely on Kotlin coroutines to achieve high scalability. It provides an easy-to-use API, and its features are pluggable and extensible. Cater is also actively used outside of JetBrains, so we get a lot of feedback. One of the aspects that people like about Cater is how simple it is to get up and running without any magic in pure Kotlin code. We've recently increased the team size in Cater and have a lot of plans in place for the framework, not only in terms of features and functionality, but also commitment to API stability and release cadence. Modern server-side often means serverless, yet setting up the corresponding infrastructure is far from easy. When something is repetitive, verbose, or hard to maintain, that's where Kotlin comes in. In particular, Kotlin, the experimental serverless Kotlin framework that focuses on reducing the routine of serverless deployment by generating straight from the code of the application itself, whether you write your application with Spring or Cater. I'm happy to announce that we are forming a separate team to work on the Kotlin project, expanding support for cloud platforms with the addition of Google Cloud Platform and adding support for Graal VM runtime. How big is Kotlin server-side adoption? It is big and growing. I'll show just a few examples. Atlassian is using Kotlin for all its new services development. Adobe prefers Kotlin to Java to streamline its server-side code and get better developer experience. ING Bank is increasing its productivity with Kotlin. And there are many more stories like that. There are other talks to watch during this Kotlin Online event focused on server-side in general, Cater, and Kotlin. Please join them to learn more. Next, Svetlana Isakova will tell you about Kotlin multi-platform.
Our vision is for Kotlin to be a reliable companion for all your undertakings, a default language choice for whatever project you decide to work on next. With Kotlin, you can apply your knowledge of the language when you switch to a new platform. Like you're an Android developer and decide that you want to implement a web version of your app, or you're interested in writing server-side code. You can reuse your skills and expertise by choosing the language that you're already familiar with. Kotlin multi-platform technology helps to achieve that. Here is how it works. At its core, there is common Kotlin. It consists of the language and the core libraries. You can write the Kotlin code once and then compile it to different target platforms, such as JVM.js or native via LLVM. You can interact with different platforms using platform-specific versions of Kotlin. You can easily mix Java and Kotlin code together when it's compiled to JVM, use TypeScript definitions from Kotlin.js code, or call Kotlin native code from Swift. We are working on the set of core libraries, and we encourage the community to join our effort and provide multi-platform versions of more domain-specific libraries. During our event, you can learn the details about each of the core libraries in the corresponding talks. Anonymous statistics shows us that 10% of IntelliJ IDEA users, including both Ultimate and Community versions, build their projects for more than one platform. That's very exciting news for us. Let's build the future together using the Kotlin multi-platform technology. We are seeing more and more people using Kotlin.js for sharing business logic between server and web clients, or alongside mobile targets, which is really exciting for us. The web target for Kotlin multi-platform is an important strategic investment for Kotlin. It's actively used inside the company to build and ship JetBrains Space. It's a big project with more than 70 developers working on it, and it's full-stack Kotlin. We are working in close collaboration with the Space team. We analyze and approve their first-hand experience of using Kotlin multi-platform for web with the goal of making it a mature technology in the future. What's new to Kotlin.js in 1.4? You can try the new compiler backend, which is currently in alpha. It will become the new default in the near future, and it considerably improves the size of generated binaries. It also comes with a new, more comfortable way of interoperating with the JavaScript and TypeScript ecosystem. In addition to the new compiler, 1.4 also introduces new features for managing style sheets and PEM dependencies and more, all of which are ready for you to use. We warmly welcome the growing number of community libraries and frameworks for Kotlin.js, like FreezeDo, Doodle, Keyvision, or Corogy. We are working on the WebAssembly target for Kotlin. WebAssembly is the new web standard supported by all the major browsers. It exposes a virtual machine to the users of the browser, and of course we would like for Kotlin to run on it. We are working on the compiler prototype that uses the WebAssembly proposal for garbage collection and collaborating with the WebAssembly VM vendors to make sure that Kotlin will be a good fit in the ecosystem. If you want to learn more about the current state of Kotlin.js and its future, I'd suggest listening to the talk from my colleague Sebastian Eigner, Kotlin.js in 1.4 and beyond. Don't miss it! Next, Anastasia will talk about another important application of Kotlin multi-platform technology, using it for mobile development.
Since 2019, Kotlin has been a recommended language for Android development. Our team has put in a lot of effort into making the lives of Android developers easier and more enjoyable. and the Android community has been truly supportive. But what if we can go further? Sharing code between Android and iOS is the holy grail of mobile development. Write UR for one platform and get it running on the other one without having to redo your work. Wouldn't like that, right? But there's a problem. These platforms are really different, especially when it comes to the UI layer. They have different navigation logics, different controls, different best practices. At the same time, however, the business logic, such as network and data management or some internal calculations, is often the same for both platforms. This makes it natural to share only parts of the app you really need to share, and then leverage all Android or iOS platform-specific capabilities when you need them. Kotlin multi-platform technology gives you this flexibility. Over the last year, we have concentrated on turning this technological possibility into a smooth and enjoyable end-to-end user experience. And with 1.4, we have released Kotlin Multi-Platform Mobile, an SDK for cross-platform mobile development. With KMM, you can write your multi-platform Kotlin code in Android Studio, an IDE you are already used to, and run an iOS application from the same tab you used to run your Android app. Write cross-platform tests in common code and launch them on both Android and iOS targets, all from the same IDE. If you want to create a new multi-platform project from scratch, there are comprehensive guides and an IDE wizard to get you started. And if you have an existing Android application written in Kotlin, you don't have to throw your entire codebase out of a window just to make it cross-platform. You can reuse the code you have already written. Create a new multi-platform module in your Android app using the special wizard we have created. Move your existing Android code to this module and integrate it with the iOS app. Integration with the iOS ecosystem is seamless. With Objective-C interoperability, a framework produced from Kotlin code looks just like any other iOS framework. And we have improved support for the CocoaPods dependency manager to make this integration even easier. Now it takes just a bit of initial setup and a couple of strings in the build script. Join these developers who are already using KMM in production and join its capabilities. Autodesk has introduced Kotlin Multi-Platform Mobile to their PlanGrid app to ship a single source of truth for offline sync logic and data models on 3 platforms: Android, iOS, and Windows. Quizlet migrated their business logic from a shared JavaScript approach to KMM, and by doing that, they drastically improved the performance of both their Android and iOS applications. TouchLab, IceFrog, and MyGo use KMM to deliver better apps for their clients on both platforms and to reduce the time these apps spend in development. Even an app for an ambitious startup run by a single developer, the Hue Essentials app, is powered by KMM. And this is only the beginning. Kotlin Multi-Platform Mobile is an alpha, and we have a lot of exciting things planned for the future. A better onboarding experience, painless Gradle configuration, faster compilation, of course, iOS ecosystem interoperability improvements, new IDE features and bug fixes, and lots of infrastructure and stability work. Take your existing application and make it multi-platform right now. If you are interested in mobile development with Kotlin, Android, or multi-platform, the 3rd day of our online event has talks just for you. Florina Montanescu will talk about the state of Kotlin for Android. Ekaterina Petrova will offer an introduction to Kotlin Multi-Platform Mobile for newcomers. And if you are already familiar with Kotlin Multi-Platform, Dmitry Savinov will be there with his Diving into Multi-Platform talk to expand the borders of your understanding. Stay tuned. And now, let me pass it over back to Andrei.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thanks, everyone. 10 years ago, we started Kotlin as a better language for the JVM. but over time it became a lot more than that. Today, Kotlin is a community of backend developers and front-end developers, mobile developers and web developers. We see more and more cloud users among us, and even data science in Kotlin is already a thing, exciting as it is. Today, we did a quick survey of the key parts of the Kotlin ecosystem and outlined the primary direction we're taking right now. To sum it up very, very briefly, 1, we're doubling down on the performance and bug fixing, so we'll be making Kotlin faster and smoother for you. 2, the new compiler is underway, making good progress. It will bring really big speed-ups and lots of flexibility in the future. 3, we're investing a lot into the server-side use cases. We'll keep improving in this area on all fronts, from the language to the frameworks. And 4, Kotlin Multi-Platform Mobile is our first step in productizing all the cool multi-platform technology we have developed. All we presented today is a very high-level picture. If you want more details, make sure to look at our roadmap that we published recently. Here's a link. It's up on the website. Check it out. What we didn't really talk much about today is the exciting new language features that may await us in the future. I'm sure many of you will be curious to know more about them. So there's a dedicated talk by Roman Yalysarov named The Future of Kotlin. This talk will give you a glimpse of the challenges that the language research team is working on now. So Roman will talk about what kinds of features Kotlin can have and what kinds it cannot have in the future. You know how it goes, no promises, but lots of insight. So check out this talk if you're interested in the future of the language as such. Well, it's been a packed 30 minutes. We're really excited to be talking to you. Sharing our plans and vision and hearing your feedback is always a thrilling experience. We have 4 days of talks, Q&As, and discussions ahead of us. Lots of interactions. This is the first time we're doing it online. I feel a bit nervous, but I'm sure it will all go very well. I wish you to have a good one. Have fun, and have a nice Kotlin.
Well, I hope that keynote gave you a small taste of all the wonders that Kotlin 1.4 has to offer. But before we actually continue with our scheduled program, I think Hadi has to make a little correction to the statement he made before.
Yes, thank you, Seb. Before, I was saying that we had actually scheduled this for some time, for one day to be in the afternoon and another day to be in the morning. And you, instead of correcting me, thank you for not correcting me, just let it slide. And now here I am making this apology. But anyway, folks, everything's going to take place at 4 p.m. Central European summertime. And by the way, we don't know if this is the last summer. I mean, the last change of schedule, not the actual literally last summer. I hope it's not the last summer. Anyway, so we're back on schedule. And talking about schedule, one thing that is important is that if folks hadn't noticed, the talks are recorded, although then we're going to have the speakers actually join us for Q&A. What this means, Seb, is that if we are off schedule, you know what this means, no?
What does it mean, Hadi?
It doesn't mean that the speaker is going on more than they should. It means it's your fault or my fault.
I am always ready to take the blame.
But anyway, no, talking about timing, I mean, this release has been quite a long time in the making, right? With multiple milestone releases and wonderful release candidate. And we're able to collect a lot of feedback from the community.
Yeah, I think it was really nice to kind of see this version of Kotlin evolve and see how everyone just kind of tried it out and how many people really kind of gave back to us and helped us make this a possibility and helped everyone developing this make it a possibility simply by providing their feedback and their issues and so on.
Yeah, a big thank you to the community. And I know that every other time, like we're writing these blog posts for the releases. I say we, you and Sveta and a few other people are writing these blog posts for the releases. There's a whole lot of people that we're thanking for, not only for pull requests and code contributions, but of course, the bug tracking and feature requests and finding those bugs and logging, right?
Well, there's so many things.
Yeah, thank you to everyone for making this release and in general Kotlin be a language that is being enjoyed and loved by many people. But talking about love, What's the most exciting? Okay, well, not really love, but what's the most exciting part for you from 1.4?
What do you mean, not really love? I think Kotlin is the one true love in my life. I'm not going to lie here.
I'm not going to comment. Okay, go ahead. Seb,
Don't. But I need some support in the YouTube chat, please. If you feel the same way, please let us know in the chat. Well, I actually have a couple of features, and usually when I've had a couple of people ask me this, most recently in Kotlin London, which unfortunately also only was online. But I think one of the underdogs in the Kotlin 1.4 release was the array deck as a data structure, right? A double-ended queue. It might be kind of weird to put this in the spotlight so much. Probably most people would say something like, I don't know, the trailing commas, the functional interfaces, all these fan favorites. But yeah, what about you, Hadi?
So did you see Roman's tweet the other day?
The one about arrays?
Yes.
I did.
He said don't use arrays. So just, okay, I'm not going to use arrays anymore. So I'm not going to say anything about that. But
that's a smart move.
No, that doesn't matter. But what about me? What about me? Oh, what are my most exciting features? Well, I mean, look, I got to tell you, like, I really am excited about the work that's being done on the compiler and the performance, because, you know, that is still one of the complaints that we get is, you know, how can you make this build faster? How can you make it quicker? How can it just make me be happier? And I think that any work that we do in that direction is fantastic. And of course, you've got the backend, the new backend that we're writing, which is going to allow things to move much faster in the future, right? Because we've got a common backend and not each thing doing its own thing. So for me, this is like way more exciting than any specific feature, right? But then again, I've always kind of been like that, because when people ask me, like, what's the most exciting feature for you of Kotlin? I'm like, there isn't one. It's just like the whole thing together that for me gives it a good experience, right?
Yeah, it just moves along very nicely. But I think you kind of hit it out of the park there. The kind of migration to this new IR compiler is going to be, I think, a very big step just in the way that the language evolution also just kind of moves on, of course. Me, I'm in a bit of a special situation because I also very much am involved in promoting Kotlin.js, the JavaScript target, and they're building a lot of features that are specific to the IR target as well, right? So that could be anything from TypeScript interoperability to new support for incremental compilation there. Just a whole bunch of new things.
Yeah. And also you work quite a bit with React, Kotlin React, right? Which is
yes, exactly.
I remember you helping me add that to a project, and then I ran away because React.
Yes, and then I helped you add it, and then I helped write the code which I added.
Well, okay, I was just going to say who helped me add it. You don't have to take all the glory for it. Damn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but anyway, talking about the future, let's talk about the past. So beautiful segue there.
What a segue.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what is your background to JetBrains, Seb?
Yeah, so when I first
you kind of were born, I don't want the whole story kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Then let me fast forward. Yeah. One day I was at JetBrains, and at that point I was working in marketing specifically targeted towards education. So working together with universities, communicating with professors, trying to get them to use, for example, IntelliJ IDEA, but of course also Kotlin, which is also becoming, I would say, more and more popular in kind of the whole education background. I've kind of moved a little bit from this now, but even as a developer advocate, I would personally still say, well, I'm kind of a teacher. I have the same, I also need to communicate to people the different structures, all these kind of things.
Yeah, and talking about education, we have an awesome video that our colleague Ksenia Shinawayz has been working on, who's marketing manager for education. Let's watch it.
Hi everyone, welcome to this video about Kotlin in education. Let's take a closer look at the key reasons why professors choose Kotlin.
I use Kotlin for everything I teach. I think it makes app development much faster and much easier.
I like teaching Kotlin because it's so concise. It helps reduce common programming mistakes.
The UI that you can build with Kotlin is really crisp.
We also use Kotlin for research projects.
Kotlin is a great choice for learning programming from scratch.
It's also easy to get started. We point students to the Kotlin playground so they can start coding in Kotlin and trying it out right away.
It's just as comfortable as it can be.
I like teaching Kotlin because students get just as excited about it as I do. They quickly pick up on how safe, concise, well-supported, and enjoyable to use the language is.
And I think it's also really great to share that fun with the students, especially when I get to see their faces and they go like, oh, what? You can do that?
I'm on board 100%. My students really enjoy it. And I think Kotlin is a really great tool for education.
So, Kotlin team, great work. Thank you very much.
And we're back. Did you miss us? Well,
I miss
unfortunately, yeah, you miss me?
Yeah,
You've been here the whole time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. I switch every time we go offline. I was looking at Twitter.
Oh my God. Well, unfortunately, Ksenia couldn't actually join us for a live interview right now, which we had initially planned. However, the good news is that if you are interested in the topics of the video, she currently is available in the YouTube chat and is answering your questions over there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, Seb, you know, since Ksenia couldn't join us, maybe we should discuss Git. Right?
That seems like a dangerous thing to do, Hadi.
Why? I mean, it's not like I'm all rallied up, right? I've been discussing Git on Twitter for a couple of days. Let's forget that. But folks, if you want to learn more about education, go to kotlinlang.org/education, which Ksenia has been doing a lot of work in the area of education and getting folks at universities, at colleges, at schools interested in using Kotlin as a first programming language.
And it's very impressive work. She has probably one of the biggest Google Sheets I have ever seen. And we all know that a good project starts with a big Google Sheet.
Or an Excel sheet.
Or that. We don't discriminate.
Or numbers. Does Linux? Yeah, there's OpenOffice thing, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about Linux. No. Anyway, talking about ways to interact. I love the way how we just do segues without actually being related to what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, but that's how that works.
Exactly. So let's talk about ways that people can actually reach us.
Yeah, because this is actually quite an interactive segment, even though it's a live stream and it really feels like it's just us talking to you. You can actually talk back. We have the chat right next to the stream here on YouTube and on the event page. You can, of course, ask us questions on Twitter using the hashtag Kotlin 1.4 ask. And go ahead.
Without the dot.
Without the dot. I don't think Twitter supports dots in hashtags.
Oh, okay. Well, learn something new every day. Sorry. Go ahead.
Someday you'll become a social media expert.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. That's what I aspire to. See, I'm trying, right? I'm trying to stir up controversy.
And you'll get there.
Yeah, but after each talk, you're going to have short conversations with the questions that you folks are going to be asking, right? So make sure that you do start asking that. And we've got something special lined up at the end of each day, right, Seb? What's that?
Yeah, so we'll have a larger discussion panel with all the speakers of the day, but we'll just try to get through as many of your questions which have been asked beforehand or which could have been answered in the short Q&A sessions. And the best part about this, because some people have also asked about this in chat already, there are options for you to win small prizes here as well. So you should definitely start submitting your questions. Apart from that, on the event page, we also have a quiz quest. So quiz quests are a set of questions for each talk that will follow throughout the whole event. On October the 26th, we're gonna raffle off a bunch of different Kotlin swag to the best answers. So especially the important part is make sure to register with the same email address for each quiz. And you can win t-shirts, you can win bottles, you can win backpacks, the exact ways of how this is determined, I think, will either be found on this page or will be explained by Alina, who will join the stream on day 3.
Awesome. So let's give more way to Kotlin content. And the first talk is coming from Egor Tolstoy, who's product marketing manager in Kotlin. And you've seen this question in the chat. How can people contribute to Kotlin? And it's almost like we had anticipated this question. Egor's talk will talk exactly about this topic. So let's enjoy the talk.
Hey, my name is Egor. I am the head of product management in Kotlin. Today, I want to talk about Kotlin community and its incredible power. I joined the team about a year ago, and I'm still amazed by it all. In particular, I've been amazed at how the development of the language is influenced so much by its users. One of my favorite stories is about how the support for generics appeared in our Objective-C interop. Last April, Kevin Galligan sent in a huge pull request which added support for generics in Kotlin native. We didn't immediately include it in the release at the time, though we left the option of enabling it with a flag. As it turns out, though, the community loved the feature, so in 1.4 M1 we officially released it. When I was preparing for this talk, I realized that Kevin is the best person to tell us about his contribution story.
So the question is, why do we contribute to Kotlin? At TouchLab, we're doing a fair bit of work with Square to improve the Kotlin multi-platform ecosystem. And one of the first things we talked about was Kotlin, Swift, and Objective-C all have generics in their language, but you can't get the generics output when you make a Kotlin into an Xcode framework. So I reached out to the native team. We discussed the issues. Primarily, they're very different languages, so there's going to be some problems implementing generics. But we went ahead anyway, put it in as an experimental flag, and then people liked it enough that recently it became a default option. So now you get generics in your output. So we as an org spent a lot of time working in the field with companies actually doing stuff in production. And that gives us kind of a unique perspective and very quick feedback that we're able to contribute. And ultimately our goal is to make this platform as huge, because that's we're basing our business around it. And that's, so that's why we're contributing back to the platform.
And Kevin is not the only one who makes the Kotlin ecosystem huge. The community has been Kotlin's main driving force from the very beginning. At 100, that is the number of pull requests made by Toshiaki Kamiyama, our most active GitHub contributor. And that's a hell of a lot of pull requests. Every week, he fixes a few more bugs than people from the community have reported, and improves the lives of thousands of people by doing so. But making pull requests isn't the only way to contribute to Kotlin. Users can also actively help us to improve the quality of Kotlin by submitting feedback and bug reports. For example, here are the top 5 bug report authors in our UTech issue tracker since 1.3 release. Thanks to them, we've caught and fixed a huge number of issues. My personal focus in our team is to make Kotlin shine on the platforms you work with it. I want your developer experience to be great while using Kotlin. I am a developer myself, like literally anyone in Kotlin team, so I know that there are some challenges that no one can solve besides you. And this is where I desperately need your help. So today we will talk about how you can contribute to Kotlin, help the ecosystem, and solve your own challenges. I think that those of you who have been working with Kotlin for a long time have all faced situations where new features, say in Objective-C interop, are not working as you might expect. Just imagine, you update to a new version of Kotlin, but instead of enjoying performance improvements or playing with the shiny new features, you spend a lot of time setting dirty hacks to fit your specific scenario. I'm sure that it can be very annoying. I know that feeling. All the features that we make go through detailed analysis at design meetings, are tested on known user scenarios, and are discussed with the community. But each project is unique in its own way, which means that we may miss some cases that are crucial for you. The best way to avoid this is to give your feedback to our team as early as possible. To make it easier for you to do so, we release early access preview versions of Kotlin called EAPs. This allows you to install it, Try it in your own project, look out for bugs, and report them to our team. One recent example is a problem found by Jake Walton in 1.3.60. When he found out that there would be many changes related to Kopt in the next release, he decided to run a set of tests on his project which uses Kopt heavily. As a result, he discovered that the changes caused that build to hang for an indefinite period of time. The problem was quickly reproduced and explored by our technical support team. They found out that the bug appeared because of the new type inference system and was specific for very large maps. The problem was fixed in just 3 days, which is, pretty fast for a programming language. And the next Kotlin release was working correctly. It is very easy to install AAP versions. In your IDE, just go to Tools, Kotlin, configure Kotlin plugin updates, and select a proper update channel type. And from now on, all of your new features will use Kotlin AAP versions. If you want to use AAPs in an existing project, you should also modify your Gradle files. We have described the algorithm on a special page, so feel free to check it out. It is available in the description of the video. If you encounter any bugs or other problems in an AAP, post them to our UTech issue tracker. All the new tickets are carefully reviewed by our technical support team. They will reproduce the problem, ask you for additional information if needed, reduce it to its essence, and pass it on to our development team. We try to fix bugs in AAP versions as quickly as possible, because at this stage, changes in the codebase are all still relatively easy for us to implement. If you want to simplify migrating to new versions of Kotlin, use AAPs. It's that simple. But I also want to share with you another life hack that gives you the opportunity to influence the language's priorities at an early stage. Each of you has unique experiences from developing your own projects with disparate trials and challenges. And your experience is very different from what our team has. The job of a product manager is to learn about your experience and take it into account when designing and prioritizing new features and plans. User interviews help us learn this information, and that's how they work. Someone from the product team calls you and asks a number of questions about your development experience, your approach to solving work tasks, and the specific details of your projects. The result of these interviews is a list of insights about your pains and needs, and sometimes even a cool case study that we can share on our social media channels. Let's look at an example. Recently, we conducted a series of interviews with developers that are working on large Kotlin JVM projects. Many of them still have a relatively huge Java code base. We've learned a lot of interesting things from these 30 interviews, particularly about how development productivity is affected by the quality of some IDE refactoring features in a multi-language environment. For example, inline and change signature refactorings. This knowledge led us to increase the priority of improving these refactorings and moving them up on the roadmap. Your experience is important to us. If you are interested in sharing it with us, please leave your contact information in the form by clicking on the link in the description of the video. When the time comes to investigate a problem relevant to you, we'll get in touch and conduct an interview. The more experience you gain, the more unique problem-solving knowledge you have at your disposal. Which library to choose for working with WebSockets in Android, how to properly organize bulk requests in Spring, what part of the codebase to move in the actual declaration in Kotlin multi-platform mobile. At some point or another, you may have had the desire to share this experience and knowledge you've gained with the community to help other people with similar problems. Let's see how developers usually solve their challenges at the moment. When a developer faces a problem, they usually start looking for a solution directly in the tool or in the codebase. If the IDE or compiler doesn't offer any suggestions, the developer goes to Google, where they end up either in the documentation or in some third-party content, for example, in dev.to articles or maybe on Stack Overflow. If they can't find the answer there, they proceed to the next level and ask questions in the community channels, for example, in Slack or in Telegram or somewhere else. If no one from the community can help, our support team come in, dive deep into the problem, advise a workaround, and pass the problem on to the development team. At the second and third stages of this process, most developers start to look for help on Stack Overflow. So, when you want to act on your desire to help other members of the community, the most effective way is just to go there. By answering questions on Stack Overflow, you help not only the original author, but also all the people who will open this page afterwards, and there are lots of them. I'm very glad that we already have so many active contributors on Stack Overflow. Here is just a few of them. They are awesome. But there are still a lot of areas where you can help with, where you can share your knowledge. 36% of Stack Overflow questions are not marked as solved, and 20% have no answers at all. So head over to Stack Overflow, select the tags that reflect your experience, like Kotlin, Spring, GPA, or maybe multi-platform, and help other people benefit from your expertise by giving them helpful answers. It is really cool to be a programmer. Unlike many other engineering professions, we can increase our productivity not just by using professional tools, but by improving them ourselves. There is a famous Boy Scout rule: leave your code better than how you found it. The same approach can be applied to a work environment. Leave your tools better than how you found them. These contributions may vary in complexity, from sharing your usage statistics to developing new libraries or creating a video course. Each contribution makes your tooling and community better, which in turn helps future you. It is very easy to cross off the first item on this checklist. Let's see together how to do it. About 8% of Kotlin developers share anonymous usage statistics with our team. Increasing this number is very important for us, as it helps us make more correct product decisions. Let's return to the topic of tooling quality in mixed Kotlin Java code. There are lots of various refactoring features in IDEA, so it's not completely obvious where to start. We answered this question with the help of feature usage analytics, which showed us the frequency with which developers perform actions. We combined this data with our knowledge of specific problems and their importance. And as a result, we were able to create a good, balanced list of priorities. To help us improve the accuracy of our priorities list, just follow a couple of simple steps. It should take no more than 20 seconds of your time. So just put the video on pause, open IDEA, go to Settings, Appearance and Behavior, System Settings, Data Sharing, and click the checkbox there. Done? Okay, well, maybe we can't call something that requires 4 clicks easy, but I believe that you were able to handle it. Thanks. And that's it. And I hope that after it, you will cross off other items from this list as well. When we started working on Kotlin, our main goal was to create a tool that would increase JetBrains' own productivity and enable it to make its products more efficiently than with Java. Kotlin's development process was open source even before the official release, and we got lots of feedback from outside the company. This included feedback from Android developers who tried Kotlin but struggled with the fact that it didn't work in their projects. We iterated on that feedback, fixed some of the problems, and made sure that Kotlin worked for them as well. And the community saw this. They started to use Kotlin for their tasks. They migrated their unit tests to Kotlin, as well as individual product features and even entire applications. I also worked in a mobile development team that adopted Kotlin even before its official release, and I saw how much better our developer experience was because of it. Besides apps, the community started to create lots of useful Kotlin content, from inspiring blog posts to video tutorials. Gradually, the folks at Google started to receive more and more questions from the community. When will you support Kotlin officially? How can I use Kotlin in production? Look how great Kotlin is, and many more. The number of questions coming from the community and Kotlin's adoption in the industry both got to such a level that Google decided to add Kotlin to the list of officially supported Android languages. But there was more. The community began to develop so actively that in the first year after the announcement, the number of professional developers on Kotlin increased sixfold. And another year later, Google officially recommended the Kotlin first approach for Android application development. And it's all thanks to you, the developers. My role on the team is to listen to our users, learn about their usage scenarios and pains that are important, and help to make the developer experience great. I am committed to this, so feel free to save this email, which I check out daily. If you ever want to complain about something or tell me your story, but you don't want to use our other feedback channels, I will be happy to handle a request myself. The evolution of Kotlin would be impossible without community participation and feedback. You are what made Kotlin first the preferred language for Android development, and now the general-purpose solution for so many platforms. I am looking forward to seeing what wonderful things we can do next together. Stay in touch and have a nice Kotlin.
It's almost like we invented local teleportation, because he was just on stage and now he's here in the studio with us. Egor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for watching my talk.
So it was really inspiring to just kind of see all the stories of the community giving back through so many channels, which we kind of mentioned a little bit before and as well, from issues to pull requests, right, to trying out EAP versions.
Can you please repeat the question?
No, I was just saying it's very nice to see how many different ways the community finds to give back to us in the form of different types of feedback.
Yeah, that's really the thing that fascinates me in working on Kotlin. It's you really can feel how many people use the product, and you can get their feedback anytime you want. So it's really great for a product manager. It simplifies my work very much.
I have to say that actually, as someone who sat in on a couple of the user interviews, it's always very refreshing also to see how open people and also different companies are in sharing their pains and sharing the ideas that they have, and having this kind of exchange with the community, I think is something that's super productive.
Yes, because we use user interviews as as a primary source of insights on what is good and what is bad in the language. So yes, the openness of our community, it's really great.
So as someone actually commented on YouTube, they said to think about the fact that even a code language has a product manager. It is just awesome, which it is. And as product manager, you've conducted a lot of user interviews, right? What is the general feeling that people have in regards to the language?
Well, a good product manager habit is to ignore all the compliments that you may hear, but instead focus on user pains, problems, and frustrations. I often see not only good things, but when you fix such a pain point, you got so much love and great feedback that it becomes impossible to ignore it. And sometimes I ask users a special question, like, what do you feel when you write Kotlin code? And my favorite answer here was that Kotlin gives you, a feeling of rightness. When everything is in its place and you feel the childish joy when everything goes as you intended it to be. So I often hear such answers, and I can say that developers love Kotlin. And as I already told you, it's a great personal motivation for me to work on a product that people love and value so much.
So just for the record, is it also correct to say that from now on, I will never, ever give you compliments? I could just tell you the pains. Like, are you okay with that?
Well, I think that you did it from the first day we met.
Oh. You see, I know how product manager should work. There you go. That's the thing, right? Because I knew you're going to ignore all the compliments. No, but Egor, you're doing an awesome job. Now, don't ever say I don't compliment you.
Oh, thanks, you too.
Well, I think the childish joy that you brought up there is a really good point, and it's probably also how I would describe the feeling. You know, I said beforehand that Kotlin is my one true love, and it is this childish joy of just seeing things fall into place and work out nicely, and just being happy with the solution that I haven't found anywhere besides Kotlin. But you mentioned how much the community is giving back. Now, maybe some of our viewers at home are inspired by this as well now. I really hope they are. So for people who have not given back to the community before, who've maybe only experimented themselves or built their own projects, how would you recommend that people start giving back or helping in the Kotlin community?
Well, I'm a fan of quick reinforcements, so I would suggest to start with the most simple thing. To enable anonymous usage statistics sharing, open IDEA, go to Preferences, Appearance and Behavior, System Settings, or the data sharing, and click the checkbox there.
Wow.
Well, you can see that.
Very subtle, Egor, very subtle.
I'm not very good as a product manager in, building user journeys in our product. It's a simple but very important thing that will help our team. The second step is to help other people. Just go to Kotlin Slack or Stack Overflow with Kotlin Tag and help people in things that you're really good at. And I believe that anyone, even if you are not an experienced programmer and you started recently, you already have something to share because you already have solved some tough challenges. So I think you can help many people by doing so. And the last thing is to participate in Hacktoberfest, but not by, making pull requests to Kotlin, telling us that Kotlin is an awesome language.
Yeah, you don't want compliments.
But there are really so many libraries out there with so many issues that you can go and solve that you will easily beat those 5 pull requests, get your t-shirt or plant a tree and help many people by doing so.
There's also, if I'm not mistaken, we have the up for grabs tag on UTrack, which is kind of issues, mostly bugs that are simpler for folks that aren't familiar with the code bases and a good starting point for them to actually contribute code, right?
Yes, and most of them are consolidated around IDE problems. So when you fix such a thing, you will see the immediate feedback. So you can help yourself. It's great.
And we have a question from Mido that says, since the Kotlin roadmap is now public, can someone contribute externally to one of your upcoming features in the plan? And what would be the process for this?
There is no some established process here. I think that you can follow the general rule with up for grabs tickets, and some of them may help one of those tasks in the roadmap. Probably in one of the next iterations of roadmap, we will also add some kind of community help section where we will highlight major things that community can help with. But it's in upcoming plans.
Okay. Maybe one kind of small question to still round it out. We've heard how people can contribute if they're just getting started, but if you had one way that people should contribute the most, what area do you think is maybe underserved?
I still believe that it's an area of helping other people, because there are, if you saw the beginning of the keynote, I show the usage numbers of Kotlin. You see that our user base is, it really grows with many people joining us in the last year. So more people, more questions, more problems, and we really need the help of community to help them and to answer all of their questions, because our support team is only 6 people, and we can't we can't solve all the requests. So I think it's a very big area where anyone can contribute.
Well, you've heard it here, probably not for the first time and not for the last time. If you want to contribute, answering questions is probably the right way to go about this. Well, thank you so much, Egor, for joining. We'll see you later in the big Q&A as well. Yeah.
See ya.
Take care.
Have a nice
Bye, Egor.
So coming up next is a talk from Svetlana Isakova, who's the developer advocacy team lead for Kotlin, which means she's actually both Hadi's and my boss, right, Hadi?
Oh, yes.
So we're going to get into this in just a second. Just a short reminder again to put your questions in the chat for our discussion afterwards, and of course to pay close attention so that you'll get a lot of questions correct for the quiz where you can win a bunch of Kotlin swag. For now, let's enjoy the talk.
Hello everyone! My name is Svetlana Isakova and I'm a developer advocate in Kotlin. Today we're going to talk about new language features in the Kotlin 1.4 release. This release was mainly focused on quality and performance. There are many tooling improvements, and as you know, we're actively working on the new compiler. One of the important parts of the new compiler, the new type inference algorithm, we're going to discuss a bit today. We are adding a bunch of new features to the language that we hope you're going to like and use. Some of them were expected by the community for quite a while, like SAM conversions. Others, like trailing commas, are small but really useful. Let's start with SAM conversions for Kotlin interfaces. SAM is an abbreviation for a single abstract method. If you define an interface with only one abstract method, that is called SAM interface. You often want to pass a lambda or callable reference when an object of SAM interface is expected. The ability of doing that is called SAM conversion. Starting from the very first Kotlin version, it works this way with Java interface. If you have a method runAction that takes the action interface as a parameter, in Kotlin you can pass a lambda instead. If you try to convert this Java code to Kotlin, however, you'll get an error. An official recommendation says, please try to use function types instead. Conceptually, you should have taken a function type as a parameter, not an interface. We had a request to fix that, which was created 5 years ago. It says that, okay, we understand that SAM conversion only works for Java interfaces, that is by design, that everyone should use function types instead, but that is inconvenient. This issue got loads of votes and comments, and we've often had requests to fix it. In Kotlin 1.4, we're introducing the concept of functional interfaces to address this. Be aware that we're introducing a new combination of keywords, fun interface. You need to add the fun keyword before an interface to make SAM conversions possible for it. Then you can pass a lambda instead of this interface. But this trick only works with functional interfaces. You may be asking, why have we introduced this special extra keyword and not simply allowed using all interfaces with one method by default for SAM conversions? A part of Kotlin philosophy is that we want your intentions to be explicit. If you have an interface that is intended to be used for SAM conversions, to pass lambdas instead, make it explicit. Imagine you define an interface with one method and someone uses it for SAM conversion, but it wasn't your intention. Now you are adding another method, and the usages no longer compile. With the functional interface, you see the error immediately when you try to add a new method. But most importantly, you decided to make it a fun interface, and you can't change that and break usages accidentally. Now it's time to finally get rid of Java interfaces in your code preserved only for SAM conversions. Now I want to discuss another topic related to the philosophy of being explicit. We are introducing an explicit mode for library authors. The Kotlin style guide contains special recommendations for library authors, an additional set of rules to help to ensure API stability. The first recommendation is to specify member visibility explicitly. That prevents accidentally exposing an internal or private declaration as a part of the public API. Imagine you define a function in your library, and it's obvious from its name that it's a private function and you don't want to expose it to external code. However, you forgot to add a private modifier, and now it's a part of the public API, and it's impossible to revert it without breaking someone's code. If you follow the rule that you always specify visibility, you are protected from such mistakes. You can't forget a modifier and expose something unintentionally. Another recommendation is to specify function return types and property types explicitly. For a similar reason, to prevent breaking the code by accident. For example, you define the getAnswer function and allow the Kotlin compiler to infer its type, its string. But maybe then you decide to change a minor thing in the implementation, to replace the string 42 with the number 42. And with this change, you break the user code. The users assume that the type is string, but now it's any. And you only learn about this breaking change from the complaints of the users later on. For libraries, this is unacceptable. Nothing should break unexpectedly without proper warnings and migration support. To prevent such problems, we recommend always specifying return and property types. And that is exactly what explicit API mode is doing. Before 1.4, these recommendations were only written in the style guide. We assumed that it's a good idea to follow them, but now both these recommendations can be enforced by the compiler. You compile your code in explicit API mode, and the compiler forces you to specify visibility and return types for these functions. You can decide what's more useful to you when these rules are violated, to get errors or warnings. You can see different settings for Kotlin and Groovy Gradle scripts. You can also specify it as a compiler option. Explicit API mode is mostly intended for library authors. However, if you find it useful for your project, for example for some of the modules, please use this functionality. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is extremely useful. Following many other languages, Kotlin now supports trailing commas. Imagine you see a list of elements in the code, and you want to swap the last two elements. You try to use IntelliJ IDEA functionality to swap the lines, but you get a compiler error because the last line doesn't have a comma. Trailing comma solves this. You can now put a comma after the last element in the list. Then swapping works fine and the code compiles. When you type the argument, you don't need to decide straight away whether it's the last one or whether you'll need more. If you don't like how it looks, you don't have to use it, it's optional. We don't force you to start using trailing commas everywhere. You can also put a trailing comma after the last parameter of a function or class declaration. Note, however, that if you want to refactor a function or a class declaration, we recommend not swapping the lines, but rather using the change signature automatic refactoring provided by IntelliJ IDEA on Android Studio. When you use change signature, all the usages are correctly modified for you. You are protected from forgetting to swap the actual arguments, especially if the types are the same. So please use automatic refactorings. Kotlin 1.3 forbids using break or continue inside when. If you try it, you see that the compiler suggests using labels. A workaround exists. You can label the outer loop and then append this label to break or continue. But that's inconvenient. We wanted to reserve break and continue inside when, probably for some logic related to the when expression. But it turned out that usage with relation to outer loop is expected by everyone, so now these usages are allowed. You can use continue or break inside a when expression. is then bound to the outer loop. The next topic I want to cover is mixing named and positional arguments. In Kotlin, you can specify names for the arguments, and that's sometimes really helpful. If the argument is the number or another basic type, or the expression type is not obvious, specify the name. In some cases, however, it's kind of redundant. In this case, you see that it's a color and you don't need to add the name. Kotlin 1.3 doesn't allow you to mix named and positional arguments. Formally, you can mix them, but only add named arguments after the all positional ones. And in some cases, it's not enough. So we fixed it. In Kotlin 1.4, if you use every argument in the correct position, you can give names only to those arguments that needed them for clarification. The next topic I want to discuss a bit is the new type inference algorithm. You already know that we are rewriting the Kotlin compiler, and many of you have already used the new type inference algorithm that was available for you to try. It's a more powerful algorithm rewritten from scratch that fixes more than 300 existing issues. It supports functional interfaces in first type and more use cases and brings benefits to more complicated scenarios. I will show you a couple of cases to illustrate that. Mostly, you'll notice by yourself that some of the code that didn't compile before now compiles. You can avoid extra type costs and so on. Let's look at the first example. Here, we define a map. In Kotlin 1.3, the compiler doesn't infer the type of the lambda argument. But if you look closely at this code, this type becomes kind of obvious for you. String is key in this map, and the type of lambda is a function type that takes a nullable string as an argument and returns Boolean. That means that the type of the lambda argument is a nullable string. If it is obvious for you, then why is it not obvious for the compiler? It wasn't supported, but now it works. The Kotlin compiler infers types correctly in this and similar more complicated scenarios. Another case when Kotlin starts to infer types in tricky cases is when the last expression in the lambda is smart cast. In this example, the string value is smart cast. The Kotlin compiler understands that it's not null. However, before that, the type of result was a nullable string. Now it's an ordinary string. Also, you can use callable references in more complicated cases. You can use reference to a function with a default argument value as of different types. For instance, you see this function foo that takes an integer parameter and returns string. And you use it as a function reference that takes int and returns string. But you see here, the foo function defines a 0 default value for the parameter. Now we can also interpret this function as a function that takes no arguments and returns string. In Kotlin 1.4, you can pass such a function reference to the apply function that expects a function without parameters. Then the Kotlin compiler correctly uses the default value. You pass a function reference, and the Kotlin compiler understands that you wanted to use 0 as the default value. That's really helpful in many scenarios. There are many other similar examples when the type inference algorithm infers more powerful types. I've just picked several to illustrate the concept that this algorithm is smarter now. The next feature that I want to cover is unified exception type for null checks. It's not a new language feature that you can use somehow in your code. However, I want to mention it and explain it so that you won't be surprised if you see another exception type for nullability issues. Different operations in Kotlin, such as 2 exclamation marks, typecast, platform type, expression null checks, parameter type checks, they all related to nullability. Currently, they throw different types of exceptions, like Kotlin null pointer exception or in some cases illegal state exception, with helpful messages. And Kotlin 1.4 replaces all these types with the regular null pointer exception. Note that only the type of the exception changes. Everything else remains the same. all the exceptions are thrown in all the same places they were thrown before. No new exceptions are added, no old exceptions are removed. Only the type has changed. For instance, in Kotlin 1.3, after additional nullability checks, you could get an illegal state exception with a message like, "This expression must not be null." In Kotlin 1.4, it automatically becomes null pointer exception, but with the same message as before. You shouldn't normally get these exceptions in correctly working applications, so the behavior of your program shouldn't change. Why did we make this change? It makes possible future optimizations. Right now, we don't do any optimizations. It's something to be implemented in the future by the Kotlin compiler or by the Android 8 optimizer. This optimization is especially important for Android. The goal of this optimization is to decrease the number of checks in the cases when they are repetitive. It turns out that very often the checks are generated on several levels, and they all check whether the same expression is not null. When you check the same condition several times, it's possible to merge the checks and to check it only once instead. If the type of the exception is the same, it's null pointer exception everywhere, that can be done, because it doesn't change the program behavior. Of course, after this optimization, some messages can be lost, but that's the price to pay for making this optimization and for eliminating some of the null checks. Note that it is something to be done in the future, but I wanted to emphasize that we've changed the exception types. I want to talk about generating default methods in interfaces. It's still experimental, and we've had support for it before, but we've made some changes, and I want to highlight what exactly has changed. In Kotlin, from the very first version, you've been able to define default methods in interfaces. This even works with the Java 6 target. But as you know, only starting from the Java 8 target, methods with implementations in interfaces are supported in the JVM bytecode. Kotlin has a special trick to make it work for older Java targets. It generates an additional static class inside this interface that contains the implementation as a static method. Then, when you extend this interface, the Kotlin compiler automatically inserts the Aviridian method that only delegates to that static method defined in an additional class. And that works for Java 6. But for Java 8, when you already have the JVM support for default methods, most probably you don't want this overhead of an additional default impulse class. Starting with Kotlin 1.2, we provided an option not to generate default impulse implementation, but rather use the JVM support for this method. You could use a special option, set JVM default to enable, and annotate each method of an interface with the JVM default annotation. Then, no default impulse class is generated. The default methods are used in the bytecode. In fact, you could use one of the two modes for the Java 8 target. The first one, which I've shown you, generates only default methods. Alternatively, you could instruct the Kotlin compiler to generate both default methods and default impulse classes. You might have needed that for compatibility reasons. The second mode is often used by library authors that evolve their library and shouldn't break the code that depends on their library. You had to annotate each method with this JVM default annotation. Now we are changing this approach a bit, and we don't require you to annotate each method with annotation, because it's kind of verbose. You need only to specify one of the two modes when you compile the code, but no additional annotation is needed. In Kotlin 1.4, there are two new modes for generating default methods in interfaces for the JVM 8 target. The old ones are deprecated. The new modes are very similar to the previous ones. There is a mode for generating only default methods and another mode for generating both default methods and default impulse classes for compatibility reasons. The only difference is that the JVM default annotation is no longer required. You can compile the code in JVM default all mode, and then no default impulse classes are generated under the hood, and you don't need to use the previous JVM default annotation. Currently, these two modes are in an experimental state, but they will be used by default in future major Kotlin versions. First, the compatibility mode, then the mode that generates only default methods. You can read more about generating default methods in interfaces in the Kotlin blog. It explains the topic in more detail, including an additional JVM default without compatibility annotation, which I haven't mentioned. Check the documentation page What's New in Kotlin 1.4. It contains many details about the features in the release, including the topics that I've covered in this talk. Thank you for your attention, and have a nice Kotlin!
Thank you everyone for joining us on this Kotlin 1.4 event, and we're continuing after this wonderful talk of new language features in Kotlin 1.4. We are joined live now with not only Svetlana Isakova, but also Stas Erokhin, who is development lead for Kotlin. Hello, Stas. Hi, Sveta.
Hi.
How are you both doing today?
We're fine. Watching the Kotlin 1.4 event, how it's going, how good it is, all these pre-recorded talks.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me, as they say. So we've got a whole bunch of questions for you. And I think, Seb, you're going to start it off, right? Because there's some very interesting questions.
Sure. We're going to start off with a question from Tam. I hope I pronounced that correct. I wonder how the Kotlin compiler plugin will evolve. Do we have an estimation for compiler plugins for all platforms?
Yeah, I see. Well, basically, the story behind that is it's at even earlier stage of our backend IR project, when we rewrite all the compilers from the scratch, we thought about compiler APIs. So you could just create a plugin and plug into the whole process, and this plugin would be available for all three platforms and so on and so forth. But right now we are in the process to finish our IR backends, and we are focused on that firstly. So after that work, we will continue work on compiler plugins for Kotlin.
Okay, that makes sense.
So another question. Will suspend work with functional interfaces, single abstract methods? Sveta.
It's coming. Yeah, this question is like, if someone didn't get it, we invited Stas to actually answer all the questions about the Team Plus and how it's all doing, but some things I can share, and with this thing, I think Stas can provide more details, but surely it's on the way.
Yeah, basically, for some platforms, it already works, but for JVM, in some cases, it do not work in 1.4 release, and we are going to support it in the future releases, but unfortunately, we cannot enable it by default until 1.5, because the language change. So basically, it's going to be released 1.5.
So it'd be available under the flag a bit earlier?
Yeah, under the flag it would be available earlier, but I'm not sure that it's good practice to just enable some compiler flags.
Okay. Well, we have one more, less of a question, more of a comment by Alexander, who says, trailing commas don't work in a build Gradle KTS file, though. You have anything to say to that?
Yeah, I have feeling why is like that. It's basically, I guess, because Gradle have some Kotlin embedded into that, and it could be not 1.4. So, for example, if Gradle uses 1.3, then trailing comment do not work there because they do not support it in that version of Kotlin.
So the advice here for people is to just keep updating their Gradle version in the hopes that Gradle will also provide support for Kotlin 1.4 soon.
Yes,
Start bombarding Gradle, folks. With trailing comments doesn't work, please update Kotlin version.
Very good.
Yeah, you got to find the product manager for Gradle and start attacking them. Just like we can ping Egor on Twitter and say, like,
yes,
this doesn't work. Fix it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Feedback at kotlinlang.org.
Exactly. So I know that you covered this in the talk, Sveta, but for folks that maybe have missed it or didn't fully understand, why would you use functional interfaces instead of lambdas directly?
So this I've covered in the talk that why you would use this fun keyword for interface, and that's for compatibility reasons. And with the functional interface, with the lambdas, the whole idea of functional interface is being able to use lambdas. So it's like this question is not. Like it's better to talk to the person who asked it to get what they were asking.
Okay, fair enough. But I've got another question for you, and this one is extremely, extremely difficult. Okay, so you're going to have to take the time to respond to this, right? John Moore asks, Sveta, when can we expect a second edition of the Kotlin book, Kotlin in Action?
I've asked you several times. It's complicated. Yeah, I think that most of the folks who ask this question, they want to know what when will be the addition around coroutines. And the coroutines content is huge content to cover it, and we have some plans about it, but most probably we don't want to add it to this book. And updating it, everything except coroutines doesn't really make sense, because you can just read Kotlin Action and then read all this, what's new in 1.2, what's new in 1.3, what's new in 1.4 pages, and it will be enough. So we're working on it. We're working on the some new materials, but most probably they won't be owned by other companies, and we'll try to produce the content and own it ourselves, so that to make it free and available for everyone.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you know, Roman does seem to write a book every day on coroutines and serialization and everything else anyway. So, yeah, like, there's so much documentation out there already. But, you know, Kotlin in Action was an excellent book. Well, it still is. So I'm not surprised that people want the second edition. It's like Kotlin in Action Part 2. Dun, 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 dun. No, okay, never mind. I'm done.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. Yeah, I think that's a good point, though. Thanks everybody for. Yes, go ahead.
There is another question. Sorry, I also have this access to our spreadsheet with questions. What's the benefit of one interface over type dev? And I think that initially there was the idea that type aliases actually cover all our use cases, and we don't need these fun interfaces at all. But in the end, it turned out that we still need them in the language, and mostly you can't inherit. It's like you can't define your functional with type def. You can't inherit the functional interface. So there is just another name for type, for functional type or some other, but it can't be specific, and you can't inherit from it. Stas, do you want to join? Do we want to add something?
Stas is like, nah. Well, it's all good. We're all good.
Well, Stefan, who submitted this question, you got lucky. That one got almost squeezed in. But of course, if there are any other questions remaining, we will do our best to tackle those at the end of day Q&A. For now, I want to say bye and thank you to Stas and Sveta.
Bye.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Yep. Bye-bye.
And
go ahead, my friend.
And we are going to move on to our next talk, which comes from Anton Yalyshev, who is the product manager for IntelliJ's Kotlin plugin. just a short reminder once more, if you have questions, put them in the chat and pay close attention as usual. So you'll get a lot of questions correct in the quiz. For now, let's jump right in, and here's the talk.
Hi, my name is Anton. I'm the product manager for the IntelliJ Kotlin plugin. My task is simple: to make our products bring joy to its users. Today, I want to tell you about some of the most interesting changes that have occurred over the past few months, and what our plans are for the future. Once, I met with a colleague to talk about the UX of one of the code editor's features. And while working with the IDE, he opened a relatively large file. I'll show how it looked. He opened the file, invoked the copy action for all the text, and the IDE hung for like 7 seconds. We didn't really pay too much attention to this at that time, as our heads were occupied by other things. And it just remained at the back of my mind. But wait a moment. How often do you experience 7-second lags when working with desktop software? I can't recall other products doing this. And so, at some point, we decided to research how much time people are wasting while waiting for the IDE to do something. The following events were considered: indexing, build, VCS actions, a file system refresh, as IntelliJ IDEA has its own virtual file system, project import, and UI lags. We collected and processed data from anonymous statistics, and this is what we got. We found that the amount of wasted time was only about 5% of the total session time, so don't panic. But this 5% was distributed as follows. Indexing got 28%, build 16%, VCS and file system got 3% and 4% respectively, project import got 18%, UI freezes accounted for 31%. It turned out that the small and not so small hang-ups were some of the biggest time sinks. Along with this, we already had a pretty good picture of how it was from our bug tracker, our own experience, and from communication with users. We understood that we need to move our attention and focus more on things related to the performance and stability of the IDE, as at this point we can greatly change the situation and make the development experience significantly better. To start with, let's figure out what IDE features performance most affects the quality of the dev experience. Here we can say that there are smooth typing. Whatever happens, the typing should be instant. IDE responsiveness. It should be always give an immediate response to your actions. Code completion and highlighting. Speed should never make you wait for its results. Navigation and fine usages, as intentionally invoked actions, can be allowed a bit more time to be done, but still they shouldn't break your development flow. Indexing, well, it depends on the situation. I will talk about two interesting approaches, how we work with indexing times. Let me walk you through our results step by step. Consider the code completion speed. Last year, we were focused on algorithms, and based on the anonymous statistics, this situation looked like this. Only 7.5% of cases went beyond an interval of half a second. We didn't stop there and continued to optimize it. By the time of 1.3.70, it was already a different picture. As you can see, the response time has shifted into the instant execution category. Some of you might ask, why did I choose these categories? Well, performance is a rather vast and complex area. The scientific world contains a lot of research about people's perception of response time. Let me give you some average overall findings. If you have to wait for 100 to 200 milliseconds, then it's perceived as instantaneous. If you have to wait for 500 to 1000 milliseconds, then this is an immediate response and you completely keep your attention on the object. The next interval is between 2 and 5 seconds. It's called a continuous reaction and you perceive it as a series of events, but still in a single process. And if you have to wait for 7 to 10 seconds, this is the last border where you can still keep the context of the task in your mind. After that, you gradually begin to lose it. In reality, these intervals are used for more complex calculations, but here I will keep it simple and use them only for grouping. In addition to speeding up the code completion, we organized incremental cache management. This means that in some cases, the IDE understands better what indexes need to be rechecked and does less work. It reduces latency when typing and speeds up code completion and highlighting. This is what happens, for example, when you write inside a function with an explicitly declared return type. The outer cache remains the same. Also, the module responsible for Java and Kotlin interoperability has been partially reworked. This has accelerated many performance components in case of cross-language code interaction. By the way, it's worth noting that performance is generally perceived relatively. It means that there is some kind of baseline that a person considers as a standard. Let's take, for example, code completion in gradle.kts files. Sometimes, to give you proper suggestion, the IDE needs to interact with Gradle and sometimes even get data from the internet. It takes time, and you wouldn't be ready to wait if you interacted directly with the Gradle through, say, command line. But in code completion, the same work is expected to be done faster. Generally, we agree with that. In releases 1.3.72 and 1.4, we work together with the Gradle team and our IntelliJ colleagues and rework the mechanism of interaction from all sides. So now, code completion in gradle.kts files looks much better in terms of speed. And yet, we still need to improve a lot. A significant part of users goes beyond 1 second. Another example, people who have come to Kotlin from, say, C++, or who have learned it as their first programming language. They perceived the performance differently than people who have just come from Java or who periodically work in a Java code base. Here, our colleagues have set the bar high, and what we're going to do about this, I'll tell you in a few moments. Together with the IntelliJ platform team, we worked on the code highlighting algorithm. And in this case, we did not increase the processing speed by much, but we made its appearance more consistent and meaningful. We actually can affect the user's perception of time passing while they wait for something. In the beginning, we show only the most basic syntax information. So you receive it much earlier than before. The calculation of less important data occurs right after. Take, for example, our benchmark tests that we run on Space, a relatively big multi-platform project. Space is an integrated team environment that we use inside JetBrains, and it's going to be released this autumn. So, the benchmark tests showed that the basic highlighting time for files opened for the first time in the session was halved. Another representation of the data is a chart that shows us how the highlighting time has shifted towards the desired group. This improvement came with IntelliJ IDEA 2020.1. Also, this benchmark test framework is available in the Kotlin plugin repository. You can use it, say, if you still feel that code highlighting doesn't work quickly enough. This framework will show you what files have the longest highlighting time, and you can collect additional diagnostic information from them and send it to us. It will help us a lot with the further optimization. Well, once I saw a meme from the movie Interstellar where the two main characters go to a planet with a different gravitation field, and one of them says, 1 hour here equals 7 years on Earth. The other replies, great. Then I will wait here for IntelliJ IDEA indexing to finish. Yes, our community has a good sense of humor. As we recall from the study I mentioned above, indexing turned out to be a big-time thing. How can this be solved? The procedure is really heavy and long. In the IntelliJ IDEA 2020.2, we introduced shared indexes, which promised to reduce the time spent on project indexing by up to 75%. The bottom line here is that you don't need every computer to process and index the same external project dependencies or all of your common project if you are only working on a small part of it. The system gives you the ability to create local storage for the indexes, as well as to connect to global storage where, for example, JetBrains keeps indexes for JDKs. To set up this feature for your project, read the instructions on the documentation side. It should be easy. In release 1.4, we have fixed about 50 different problems registered in our issue tracker related to IDE freezing or excessive CPU or memory consumption. This, as you can see, improved the performance in almost all the main points. Such track reports are very helpful for us to improve IDE performance. Please create them if you have any such problems. And to help us handle them better, please follow a couple of recommendations. The ticket should contain diagnostic information about the state of the CPU or memory. It can be easily obtained from the description here. Also, it's good to describe what you were doing, at what place in the file, and how exactly the problem arises. And of course, it's important that the diagnostic information was taken from the latest version of the plugin. By the way, the previous case of freezing on copy-paste now looks like this. We opened the file for the first time, copied the text, and immediately pasted it where needed. This improvement is also not about speeding up the algorithm, it's about separating the UI and calculations. If you have experienced performance issues, I can't wait to see what you think after the update. Don't forget to update IntelliJ IDEA itself, as well as improvements have been made both in the plugin and in the platform. Therefore, if you work with Android Studio, some updates may take a little longer to reach you, and we are cooperating with our friends at Google to shorten this delivery cycle. So, performance isn't the only thing our users want from us. In the beginning, I talked about the stability and quality of the IDE. We have been focusing on fixing the exception reports you send from the IDE. According to the anonymous statistics, with each release, the number of exception reports decreases by 1.5 to 2 times compared to the previous release. In addition to this, based on the same source of statistics and our issue tracker, we improved the quality of the debugger, formatter, refactorings, and other things. The quality of the IDE can have a big impact on how easy it is to work with technologies. When you are working with one of the most popular libraries, coroutines, sometimes questions may arise. For example, during debugging. What variables, what state, what call stack a specific coroutine has? And the IDE should help you with this. Here we have a lot of new interesting things. My colleague, Seva, will tell you more about this in his talk, yeah. Don't miss it. Also, in 1.4, we introduced a new project wizard, which you can use not only select a predefined template like before, but also configure the project yourself. You set the structure of modules and execution targets that you are interested in. And the tool generates the project and all the necessary code itself. We kept all of the existing templates and even added a few more. Light editing. We know quite a few cases when you just want to quickly look into some file, correct one line, or read a small piece of code. You don't want to load the IDE and all its features for this. Your time is precious, so you use third-party lightweight editors. This is actually a crazy story. Why? If the IDE provides so many capabilities, can it now provide the simplest solution? Starting this year, IntelliJ IDEA now provides the ability to open files in a lightweight version of the editor that loads very quickly and has just a very limited set of basic features. Now you can use the same product in both use cases. We have all the above in the Kotlin plugin 1.4 and IntelliJ IDEA 2020.2. Please update to them and tell us what you think. But you are probably wondering, what's next? And here, let me share with you our immediate plans. First, we're continuing to explore the possibilities of speeding up the code completion, highlighting, and navigation. Second, we will also improve the responsiveness of the IDE by eliminating deadlocks, freezes, and optimizing memory consumption, as well as stability of our plugin and its features. Third, many of us work in mixed Java and Kotlin code bases, and the IDE should not lose in its capabilities due to these circumstances. Probably, problems usually don't arise, but sometimes they do and require additional work. Here, we have almost finished developing and will soon release complete cross-language support for inline and change signature refactorings. You will have the same experience working in a mixed Java and Kotlin language base as you do when working with one language. You have probably already heard about the development of the new compiler plugin, new compiler frontend. One of its advantages is significantly faster compilation. Now, the Kotlin plugin uses the old frontend everywhere, and we are sure that by moving to the new one, the speed of many operations in the IDE will increase. This task itself is not so fast. It will not be completed before the new compiler itself is released, but we are already prototyping and have some very good results. Generally, our focus remains the same. It's mostly on performance and quality. The IDE Kotlin team, IntelliJ Kotlin team, did some really nice work, but we feel it's still not enough. For instance, the new type inference algorithm does more precise calculations, so code completion gives you more accurate suggestions, but in some cases it takes a bit more time. So we're continuing on in the same direction. Our plans are reflected in the general roadmap of the Kotlin project. They will be updated over time. Come and take a look, rate them, and share your thoughts with us. Oh, yeah, I have something more. What else can be important for improving the product besides working on the quality of features, performance, and new tools? We analyzed our workflow, evaluated our future plans, and realized that the current infrastructure of our IntelliJ Kotlin plugin is causing more overhead than it should. Perhaps someone found it strange that I was talking about the new things in the plugin first and in the platform. After all, we often hear after IntelliJ updates, people ask when it will be supported in Kotlin. Will it be available in Kotlin? We came to the conclusion that being a plugin in the Kotlin repository makes us less efficient over time. So, we have set a course to get closer to the IntelliJ platform. What does it mean? Well, originally, Kotlin was an independent project. It determined its own path, and having the IntelliJ plugin in the language repository was the right way to go. Too strong a connection to the platform could hinder its development. Now, the situation is totally different. Both the language and the plugin are mature enough. The Kotlin plugin is moving to the IntelliJ repo. It will be done in 2 steps. The first step, which we have almost completed, is a kind of joint repo that contains just 2 of these projects. The second step is to have a mono repo of the IntelliJ platform and the Kotlin plugin. How does this benefit everyone? IntelliJ IDEA developers will be able to support their features for Kotlin right away. Together with this, the Kotlin plugin gets aligned with the IntelliJ platform release cycle. At the same time, releases of Kotlin language will also come out together with with IDE support for the new language features. It becomes better for contributors. You have more options for working with the platform. And the IntelliJ IDEA contributors can now do more for Kotlin as well. Finally, this will amplify the development of the Kotlin plugin. Previously, in the Kotlin project, in the Kotlin codebase, a concrete version of the IntelliJ platform was treated as an external dependency, whereas now, Kotlin plugin and IntelliJ platform start to be in a mono repo. And the developer is working in a single code base. In such a collaboration, we will achieve good results faster, as it will be easier for us to promote changes such as log-free copy-paste or proper code highlighting order. Often, such improvements require modification for both the plugin and the platform. It kind of turns out that the improvement of IDE performance is determined by the development team performance, and the developer performance is determined by IDE performance. And I think our performance for today is coming to an end. I hope you found this presentation interesting. Keep up with the latest versions of our products and share your feedback. Thank you on behalf of our entire team for being with us. Have a nice evening. Have a nice Kotlin.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that talk on boosting quality and performance for the IntelliJ-based IDEs with Kotlin. Joining us now, again, in our very virtual studio is Anton Yalyshev. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, so how are you feeling now that the whole process of the Kotlin 1.4 release is done?
Yeah, it looks very great. Yeah, feeling good.
That's great to hear.
So, Anton, I have a question for you.
Yes.
You kind of you've been in software development tools for quite a while now, right?
All right.
Yeah. So what is your background?
Oh, yeah. Primarily, my background was in quality assurance of that software development tooling. But
which tools?
Tools, the Delphi, C++ builder.
No way. Delphi, or
yeah,
as we say in England, Delphi. There was a whole debate about whether it's Delphi or Delphi. Wow, I come from Delphi as well. Delphi.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember IntroWeb?
Yes.
So that was me. And Internet Direct, Indie Components. That was me as well. Oh, one of the people.
Yeah, let's hear it.
My claim to fame. Anyway, not enough about me. So let me tell you about me. No, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, so that was two very nice IDEs. Yeah, but during time, the legacy part of that IDE were becoming harder to support. And when I came to JetBrains and started to work with IntelliJ IDEA, looked like quite more flexible and easy to use is to work with IDE. So it was very nice feeling to feel an update on the project.
Great. And we have a couple of questions that are actually coming in from the chat. Rahul asks, if you have an old project, how do you convert that in Kotlin?
Well, if you have old project written in Java, probably then in our IDE, we have a converter from Java to Kotlin that you can call, and it will automatically convert Java files to Kotlin. And it's not perfect. Probably you need to do some corrections, but it reduces amount of routine manual work to do. And if there is, if they mean that there are old version of Kotlin in the project, then after you change a version in version of language in build file, IDE suggests to run some migration inspections that change code and change it to the new style.
So those are automatic migrations that are then just keeping your code up to date at that point.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, there isn't much in terms of migration. I mean, that much in terms of migration from an old Kotlin project. So if you are referring to an old Kotlin project that is in Kotlin, well, an old Kotlin project would always be in Kotlin. There isn't that much of a, yeah, exactly, right, Seb? Like that
a good point.
Yeah, it's a good point, right? Okay, but anyway, next question. Let's see. This is a tough one, Anton. This is a tough one. Be careful what you say here. Does the EAP break IntelliJ IDEA? I don't know. I'm assuming he's further. They're referring, Rohit. He's referring to the Kotlin EAP.
So it shouldn't, because with every EAP, we provide IDE support for that new things. So it shouldn't. If it does, please provide us feedback. Let us know as soon as possible about that.
Exactly, and that's why it's called the EAP, right? Not because it breaks, but it's like we need the feedback. Early access program. For those people that aren't familiar with what EAP stands for, we've been through this time and time again, and we haven't said what EAP stands for. And Seb, you were correcting me on what COA stands for, and here's me saying EAP and me not saying anything. So anyone didn't know EAP stands for Early Access Program. Seb, give us a question.
I'll give you a question from Gabriel, who asks why the performance on the Gradle Kotlin DSL, or in general Kotlin scripting, is kind of slow compared to a standard Kotlin project.
That's easy to answer, because just imagine the very fundamental, very low level that IDE interact with. In case of standard Kotlin files, IDE interact with its indexing system, which is very optimized for the quick completion showing, for instance. But in case of scripting, in case of Gradle script, IDE interacts with the Gradle, and there are some places that we cannot affect much, and we still work together with the Gradle team to speed up them. But in some places, IDE need to run some Gradle things. And even somewhere it even need to go to the internet to download something. It's quite rare, but there are still a couple of cases. So yeah, it's just a different background to work IDE with.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, and one more question I think we have time for. You said you've talked only about the improvements in IntelliJ IDEA. Does this apply also to Android Studio?
Yes, because as Android Studio is based on IntelliJ platform, almost all new things that happen in IntelliJ IDEA go to Android Studio. It's also, it's applied to both products, to IntelliJ IDEA.
It's essentially the same plugin, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it was great of you to join us, Anton, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. And Seb, it's time to give way to our next talk, which, if I'm not mistaken, is from Seb.
It's from Roman Yalysarov, who's our team lead in Kotlin language research. Once again, a small reminder to put your questions in the chat for the discussion afterwards. And as always, there's also quiz questions for this one, so pay close attention.
So let's enjoy the talk.
Welcome to the Future of Kotlin talk. But first, let's talk a bit about the history of Kotlin. Kotlin 1.0 was released as a pragmatic language for JVM and Android. And in Kotlin 1.1, JavaScript support was added with coroutines and more features. Initially, you could only share code by copying it, but that changed in Kotlin 1.2 with multi-platform concept where you can share code and also make it platform-specific with expect and actual. In Kotlin 1.3, coroutines were stabilized and code sharing entered the new dimension with Kotlin native, opening way more platforms to Kotlin code. And the recent release, Kotlin 1.4, was focused on quality and performance, while also adding a bunch of new features, of course. Having looked at the history, we can now talk a bit about the future. The new future is easy. It's our near-term plan. That's where we have a lot of clear picture of what we're going to work on. As you can see from the history, multi-platform is a big part of team's effort, and we're continuing to work in this direction, specifically into Kotlin multi-platform mobile, where we're focused on bringing sharing between Android and iOS, making it easier and bringing it to production quality. But Kotlin's home, where it started with JVM, is still an important focus for the team. We're really committed to improve Kotlin on JVM, which specifically means that we're committed to Kotlin's interoperability, not with the existing Java features, but also with the upcoming features of the Java language. It means that for all the new Java APIs that are going out, you can use them out of the box. And all the Java platform features that are library only, for example, like Project Loop, will be readily available to the Kotlin users. However, Java as a language is also evolving and adding new features. In particular, Java is adding records, and Java is adding sealed classes. And we will be making sure that Kotlin code can interoperate with those as seamlessly as with all the existing features of the Java language. That was near future. Now, when we talk about future further apart, let's talk first and what drives us. How do we figure out which features to work and which features not to work? What we're looking at. And the main thing we're looking at is our community. Because, see, Kotlin team, we're not a very big team. I mean, there are far more of you using Kotlin than us, working on Kotlin. And it's not our language, it's your language. You are the users of the language. So we look at our Slack and forum chats to see what people are interested in. We communicate with our big users directly to see what problems they experience, what needs they have. We look at UTrack, see what issues you vote for, what issues you create, what problems you have. And we also have key repository for language enhancement and design proposals. And this brings an interesting topic on how do we use UTrack versus Keep, what's the best way to use them for. And over time, we figured out that Keep repository works better as a storage for design documents that are worked out, prototyped, and ready to be included in the language. And Keep issues work best for corrections, suggestions, and improvements to those. While for problems, ideas, proposals, the best place to track them is through UTrack. We have a special tag there called language design. And whenever we encounter proposal or problem that people raise with respect to the language, we attack it that way. And that's how we keep track on how many people interested, what's our ideas, how that can be solved. And specifically, if you look at the language design tag at the U-Track, you'll see lots of success stories where at different Kotlin releases, we've solved problems that were really high voted and were important for many users. For example, in Kotlin 1.1, we've allowed callable references with expression on the left-hand side, and by that time it had 70 votes. That was a big number for Kotlin 1.1. In Kotlin 1.2, we've solved the long-standing problem at that time of our server-side JVM users, where it was quite verbose with annotations to write multiple values. So we've added a syntax where you could do it in a more concise way. In Kotlin 1.3, another syntactic improvement that's Kotlin specific will allow you to assign a variable and use it as a when subject in the same line. And that was a very popular feature. And of course, in the most recent 1.4 release, we've also we're looking at what you're interested in, and we've heard you, and we've closed the problem with single abstract methods for Kotlin classes. Kotlin 1.4, we've introduced functional interfaces, and that was really high voted issue. It's actually not the only issue with 200, where there are a group of several linked issues that were all quite big. And we've heard you, and we've closed this problem with Kotlin. So that kind of gives you a glimpse how we work with community, how you look at problems that you post for us and vote for, and how we close them. So now we can take a look at a more distant future. And of course, disclaimer here is everything that I'll be saying after that is just a pure speculation. It's the ideas we're looking at. It's not something we worked out in detail. So I'm telling you just because we are, as a team, we're looking for your feedback. What interests you, what you like, what you don't, what's more important, what less. But what exactly is going to turn out, time will show. To see, we don't have to go far. Let's see at the most voted language design issue right now at U-Track. What is that? That's an issue which this title, adding static accessible members to an existing Java class where extension. And if we just look at the title of this issue, it's really tricky to decipher because it has, in short, basically, it asks for static accessible extensions, which is kind of weird in Kotlin because if you look at the Kotlin documentation, you'll see that all extensions in Kotlin are resolved statically. So what exactly are statically accessible extensions, if all of them are statically resolved? If we actually read the issue itself, we'll see that the issue itself starts with a proposal. Let's allow this kind of syntax. And what is that? What's being asked here? There is some third-party type, like intent, that the person wanting this syntax doesn't control. It's coming from Android in this case. And we want, but it doesn't have a companion. So we want a syntax where you can say, but I still want to have a name and companion of this type and add an extension to this companion. The problem is not only intent being stored, but it doesn't have a companion object. The code on the right, if you write an extension for a companion, has to receive an instance of this companion as its receiver, as this variable. But we can't make this work for third-party library because if different people will be adding these extensions, they will all end up with a different instance. So when we see a request like that, when it's it lists an idea, but it's not clear how to get this idea implemented, the question we always ask is, what are you trying to achieve? Why do you want this? And in this particular case, the answer is easy. The person who asks this wants to write a type name dot extension name. That's what they're trying to achieve. They want this kind of usage. They want on the use side to be able to say, use a name of third-party type with their own extension name. The syntax they proposed, it was just one of ideas. Not they wanted to achieve is this. By understanding what you want to achieve, actually opens a door for us to better figure out how it can be solved. To start, we'll look at similar or related problems in the language. And in this particular case, we don't have to look far. Let's take a look at the standard library. Standard library has this declaration. It declares object delegates with not null functions. And we can ask why it's declared as an object, why it's not just a top level not null function. Or the same questions, what are you trying to achieve? What standard library designers writing this code were trying to achieve? And they were trying to achieve this kind of use side syntax. They wanted on use sides to read delegates dot not null. That was the intent of this code. You see, it's very similar to this question about statically accessible extensions. But the designers of standard library had to use an object to reach this goal. Well, what is an object in Kotlin? An object in Kotlin creates an instance. You can assign it to a variable. An object in Kotlin creates a type. You can do type checks for it. You can declare variables of this type. And also an object in Kotlin creates a kind of a namespace. So to enable this kind of delegates dot not null usage. But see, among all of that, we really, in this case, wanted just a namespace. Everything else, an instance, a type, is just a library maintenance burden. We had to add them into standard library in this case, or the same conundrum, third-party libraries phase 2. But it just creates now a burden because we now have to support this instance, we have to support this type, even though we never intended to have them in the first place. All we wanted is a namespace. So what if instead of creating a namespace, creating an object, we can devise a syntax that would create just a namespace? For example, add a new keyword, namespace, and say, now you can declare namespace delegates. And it gives you just a namespace. It only enables you to write delegates dot not null and nothing else, no type, no instance. Now, if you take this, a relatively simple idea, and take it further, we can see that it enables the concept of companion spaces instead of companion objects. And this actually solves long-standing problem of making the way Kotlin classes compiled closer to the way they're compiled on JVM, makes it easier to bridge Java APIs with static members because we don't introduce an instance, we don't introduce a companion type here. It also enables us to think about extending namespaces. So instead of extending a companion instance, which has a type and an instance, and we're writing extension on an instance, we can devise a syntax for namespace extension. It might look something like this. Some pseudo syntax where it says, I want to write extension of this namespace to distinguish it with writing extension on an instance. And with this kind of syntax, the code at the right-hand side doesn't have to receive any receiver. It is just like top-level function code. It just, and this way, you get what you want. You can write your third-party type with followed by dot, followed by whatever extension you wanted to have. Without introducing extra stuff like instances and all this complexity. So it gives you exactly what we wanted and also solved all the other problems in a consistent way. Now let's take a look at the other big issue that also comes a lot in UTrack and actually comes a lot in Keep. There are several Keep issues related to multiple receivers. Now receivers is and functions with extension functions, a unique Kotlin feature, and no surprise that through evolution, people have discovered that they often run into a situation where they want a few of them. How this happens? You see, and this is actually the issue, multiple receivers on extension function property. It's just one issue, and there are lots of related ones. It happens because Kotlin has a feature called member extensions. And with member extensions, you can have a class view, and you can define a member extension in this class. For example, an extension DP on the floor. That's actually a use case taken from the issue. And you see in this code, you have two receivers. One receiver comes from the class, from the extension you write. It's like an instance of a float. The other comes from the class view in our example. So this extension, being a member extension, has two receivers. One of type view, the other of type float. The challenge is that you can write those member extensions in a class, but you cannot write them as an extension to this class. And this particular issue asks for this kind of syntax. Let's give a comma-separated list of receivers and write an extension. That's what this particular issue suggests. If we also look around, we'll see that people ask for syntax like this, where they want to dot separate receivers, or syntax like this, where additional receivers are given a simplicity parameter. There have been over time, lots of suggestions of what syntax might look like. But none of those syntaxes look specifically Kotlin because they don't resonate with any existing syntactic tradition in Kotlin. They just, taken from other languages or just invented on spot. And so let's try to find what could be a better looking Kotlin syntax for this feature. Let's look for syntactic analogy. And here, syntactic analogy is how we bring a receiver into scope in Kotlin. And we bring it with a standard library function with. When we write with view, in the curly braces, we have now additional receiver that is view, and we can use its extensions. So that would be our best syntactic analogy for multiple receivers in Kotlin. So by taking this idea, we can devise a syntax looking like this, where you have a function that could be an extension function, and you add additional receivers by saying that it should be called with view and scope. And starting with the simple idea that you can add receivers with modifier, we can actually take it further in a completely new dimension, which interacts well with other Kotlin features like inline functions. How it's related to inline functions? Let's take a look to this typical problem on server side, where you have some context, for example, transaction context, and you want to wrap a block of code into transaction context. You want to start transaction, do some block of code, and commit transaction. And in Kotlin, you write this as an inline function. You take its higher order function, takes a block of code, and it wraps it into whatever scaffolding you need. With this high order function, how you use it? You write function, and inside of it, you say with transaction, and that's your code inside it that is wrapped. The great thing about this usage, it has no magic. Like any person who sees this code immediately understands that there is some function called here, and they can click the code, see what this function does, see that it starts transaction, ends transaction. Contrast this with how it's usually done with annotations. You annotate, function with some annotation, and that's magically performs this wrapping in non-transparent way. So, but here's also a downside of it. The downside of this is now your code is nested to the right, and as more of those things you add, the more code becomes nested to the side. So what if instead of this kind of use size syntax, we've introduced the concept of decorator? What if we could say that you mark a function with a decorator modifier, and when this function becomes a decorator, instead of nesting your code inside of it, you can now use it as if it was an annotation. You can just write with transaction and write your function. This way, your own code is not nested, is not moved to the right, and it gives you the best of two worlds. It gives you concise syntax, and it gives you complete transparency in what it does, because you can always click on this function and see how it's implemented. And of course, the concept of decorator is not new. It's used in many languages extensively. But for Kotlin in particular, it can be implemented statically by a combination of inline functions, and the ability of Kotlin to inline them during compilation. Now you ask how the idea of decorators related to multiple receivers. You see, in fact, that if we start thinking about decorators, we immediately come into a situation where to wrap some code, we might need some outside context. For example, our with transaction decorator might need an external transactional context that it would use to begin and commit transaction. And if a decorator needs additional receiver, it means any code that is decorated with it requires this additional receiver. So by applying this decorator function, we say that now this function requires transactional context to be called in because it is decorated with something that requires transactional context. And by taking this idea, we can, instead of bringing a special syntax to add additional receivers to functions, we can instead start with decorators and then just have a standard library decorator, for example, called with, that the only thing it does is brings additional receiver to the code without doing anything else fancy, like closing receivers or committing transactions. So now it's just a standard decoration, a standard decorator, and it's a part of a bigger feature that enables very powerful meta-programming in pure Kotlin code without having to do magic bytecode engineering, post-processing, things like that. But you see, not all features has to go this far. It doesn't mean like every feature that you ask for has to become a part of a some very big picture. There are quite straightforward asks that we can find in our U-track. For example, support for public and private types for a property. It's pretty Kotlin-y problem, and it's highly voted because it rises a lot in Kotlin code. You see, if you look again the issue, you'll see that it gives you a syntax proposal, and in this case, the syntax proposal is quite straightforward. And I hope just by reading the code on this slide that it's value of items, which is mutable list of items, with public getter that returns a list. Like every Kotlin user can immediately recognize what it does. It declares that the public type of this property is list, while its private type is mutable list. And that's one good side of this syntax, that you can understand what it's doing. And the other good side, and it actually solves an important piece of boilerplate in Kotlin, because without this feature in Kotlin, you'll have to create, use this underscore convention. You have to create a private property with a different name, and then create a public property that just to expose it with a different type. So it doesn't mean that the feature is really straightforward, like we just take this issue and next day implement it. Even for a simple feature like this, we'll need to do some design. We'll need to figure out corner cases. We'll need to figure out compilation strategies and interaction with other features. But indeed, this particular example is a feature that is pretty straightforward to implement. It requires minimal design. The other very popular and thorny question is a ternary operator. It's pretty high in the list of highest voted issues. It has 80 votes at the time I've looked at it. And right at the subject, it says what people want. They want ternary operator from Java and C, where you use question mark as an if. But here's the problem with this issue. Kotlin already has an if expression. You can write the same thing as you write in Java with full question mark A:B by if expression in Kotlin. So if we add ternary operator to Kotlin, it makes it hard for existing code to decide, like if you write an expression, which one should you use? Should you use ternary operator or should you use if expression? So this creates like insurmountable, code style conundrum. What do you do? How do you recommend people? How do you solve all the battles that will appear and which is the right in this place? The other problem is that Kotlin consistently uses question mark in the context of nullability. So whenever you see question mark in Kotlin code, it's related to nullity somehow. For example, foo question mark :B checks foo for null. So by reusing null for Boolean expression, it will make it harder for novices to figure out what's going on because it becomes inconsistent. They will have to learn in what context question mark does what. I mean, arguably for developers who come from Java or C++ background, that's not a problem. They already know turn operator. But for novices, that's going to be additional barrier in learning the language. So they have to like recognize what it really does. And you see, if you look at the ternary and compare it to if expression, you notice that ternary operator is shorter. But this conciseness and less characters you type really plays out for really short and small expressions. For example, when you have like this small Boolean variable like foo in this issue, that's where you can immediately see that writing ternary operator is shorter than writing if expression. But in real code, it's not something we work with often. In real code, you know, we don't promote using of a lot of Booleans in our APIs. Kotlin strives to enable type-safe API in your code. So you're not using Booleans, you're using type-safe enums and other more richer types to describe your API surface. So in real code, if it's well structured, you will get a lot of Booleans, or if you have Boolean expressions, they will be not just a single variable, but some long ones. And the longer expressions, the difference between if expression and ternary operator is not that apparent. Moreover, if expression with complex expressions is clearer and easier to read. So all in all, if we take this all together, I mean, it means that we'll have to decline this particular issue. So we want have ternary operator as it is came to us from Java and C++, because, you know, Kotlin already have an if expression for that, all the other problems it would bring if we add. But it doesn't mean we're not hearing that you want to write, sometimes you want to write Boolean expressions like this, maybe in a shorter way. So maybe in the future we'll figure something else out, but that would not look like a ternary operator. Not all we think about during language design or plan for the future comes from U-track issues. There are some things that are part of larger trends. And one of those trends is immutability. It's not like we have a specific issue or give us more immutability. It's what people work with. You see, and I'll show you an example how it appears in practice. So assume we have some subsystem and we keep its state. And we start with keeping its state in a simple mutable class. It's easy to declare in Kotlin. You just write a number of vars. And by being mutable class, it's easy to update. You just assigned its properties, and that's done. You've changed it. But now here is the problem. If you're writing more applications, we often use asynchronous data communication, even inside the application. We send our data over, or our states, over asynchronous pipelines, reactive pipelines. So when we do that, and our state is mutable, we cannot just send it, because while it's being transferred over the pipeline, it can change. So we have to copy it and send a copy. This is called a defensive copy. And this defensive copy that you have to do on immutable data is easy to forget, and it's a big source of errors in our modern asynchronous applications. The solution to this that people often employ is to use immutable data. And with Kotlin, this is straightforward. You know, you just change var to val, and your data class becomes immutable. It cannot change anymore. So now, when you send it, even asynchronously, you don't need to copy it, because it wouldn't change. Having done so, though, you've made it harder to change your state, because Kotlin syntax for updating a mutable class like this is quite more verbose than a single update of a mutable class. You have to do copy, you have to list all your variables updates in one place. You cannot use concise operators like plus equals anymore. It's way less convenient than working with mutable data. It creates the impression that immutable data in Kotlin is kind of second class. So the question we ask ourselves here is, can we have cake and eat it too? Can we get safety of immutability with convenience of mutable state? And I mean, surely we can. I mean, we can introduce a new concept of a value-based class. Now, what is a value-based class? A value-based class is a class whose sole state in its values. A class that explicitly disavows its identity. I mean, we say that because the only thing we care about is the value of a class, the contents of its properties. And it's not a new concept in Kotlin. If you think about it, all the what we call primitives in Java, they're actually not primitives in Kotlin, but they're built-in types like int, long, and even class like string. And actually, most of the classes in Kotlin standard library are value-based. And for like built-in classes like int and long, a compiler even enforces this. Like if you try to compare by identity to ints, you get an error that those classes do not have a stable identity. They have an identity when they need to be transferred, for example, into a collection. But it's a transit identity. It's not something you can rely on. And because of that, every time you perform operation on this, you get some new value. And identity is just something immaterial. You don't use it. And so it's not a new concept. And it's natural to extend this concept onto user-defined classes instead of just limiting it to built-in Kotlin classes. And by declaring that class doesn't have a stable identity upfront, we can now add syntactic sugar to make updating of these classes easier. Because programmer said that I'm not going to rely on the identity of the state instance. And compiler can check that you don't accidentally use this identity in, say, identity comparison or other identity-sensitive operations. We can bring syntactic sugar that will let you create a copy of this class without writing all this explicit copying code, but just writing as if you're changing a mutable class. So, and this sugar makes it this class as easy to update as a mutable class, but brings all the safety benefits of immutability. So here we go. We can have a cake and eat it too. So by itself, this idea is just an interesting direction in future Kotlin evolution, but it also lets us solve some short-term problem that we have now. And the short-term problem we have now is we need to do something with Kotlin experimental inline classes. And right now, Kotlin experimental inline classes are implemented with the inline modifier before a class. And just this modifier inline is a problem because it would be confusing as soon as Java project Valhalla comes out. And as I told you at the beginning, interoperability with various Java features is very important for Kotlin. So we're looking to the future where Valhalla becomes available and starting to think how you write Kotlin code in this world. And Project Valhalla will introduce a concept of Java inline classes that related but very different concept. By naming another different Kotlin feature inline class will create a lot of confusion. When you can inline class, it will be hard to figure out what's going on, whether it's Valhalla inline class or Kotlin inline class. You'll need to clarify it all the time. We don't want to have this confusion when Valhalla comes out. So we need to think of some different name for that. And the whole idea of value-based class gives us a way out. Instead of having an inline class modifier, we can say that inline class is just a value-based class, which is true because inline classes, as they're implemented now, they don't have a stable identity. They're boxed only when needed, and so the identity changes. And you can do identity comparisons of them. So they are a value-based class. So we can use this val modifier to say that this class doesn't have a stable identity. It's only relies on its value. But we also compile them in some special fashion. We flatten those classes into the other classes, we pass them without boxing to the methods. We return them from methods without boxing. And we can express this with some kind of annotation that basically says optimize away boxes whenever possible. And I don't know how we name this annotation, and I actually don't want even to speculate right now because I want to avoid the same problems we had with inline. So we'd rather announce this name as late as possible, so avoid any future conflict with any other features that will be coming in Java. So we want this name to be unique, so when you see it, you clearly understand there's a Kotlin, specifically Kotlin feature on how Kotlin classes are compiled. It also opens us a road in the future when Valhalla comes out to have something like @JVM inline annotation that would compile your class as Valhalla inline class if you're running on JVM that supports it. So that's the plan. So what else? You see, I've been talking a lot about features that we in Kotlin team looked how we're going to change compiler for this and that, but that's not really a scalable thing. We can't do everything you want. You know, there are lots of domain-specific needs, and each domain that Kotlin uses is unique. You know, server-side developer has their own needs, front developers another needs, et cetera, et cetera. And for that, we've been working hard in the last few years to really re-architect the whole Kotlin compiler so it works as a consistent and, more importantly, pluggable set of stages. So compiler, when it takes sources, analyzes them, they come through a front end. And if you can write front-end plugins there affecting how declarations are resolved. You can introduce synthetic declarations there. And again, in the past year or more, we've been working hard to unify all the Kotlin backends into a common backend that then later goes to generate code for JVM.js and LVM. So this way, you can write a single backend plugin that affects code generation for this specific piece of code, and it works in all the Kotlin backends on all the platforms. With this architecture that we're working on right now, it is possible to introduce new language features, not as a hard-coded built-in feature, but as a plugin. And take a look at our friends in Google who work on Jetpack Compose. With Jetpack Compose, they have this annotation, composable, that you can add to function to do nice things for reactive and interactive UIs. Make no mistakes, this composable is actually a language feature. It's very much like suspending function. But the only difference from suspending function, it's not hard-coded into the core Kotlin compiler. It's implemented as a compiler plugin. But it's a language feature nonetheless. And we specifically re-architect Kotlin in such a way to make this possible, to enable those domain-specific features to be added as plugins. And it's not the only example. Our friends at Facebook work on differentiable programming for Kotlin, where you can annotate your mathematical function with annotation differentiable, and it creates a code to do automatic differentiation of this code. It's also a language feature, just done as a plugin. As it always comes with features like that, of course, it comes with the whole library of mathematical primitives, matrices, tensors, etc. But at the core of it is this language extension that allows you to automatically derive all the differentials for the code, mathematical code you write. And there is a growing community of people who experiment with Kotlin and writing their own plugin. Erokhin community writing really cool stuff based on Kotlin, new Kotlin compiler architecture. There is Brian Null who writes power assorts library that you can Google, which is really cool. And you can have your own projects that are written on top of that. It's all experimental right now, but we are really committed to bringing it to stability in the future. So for conclusion, let's recap what we've managed to talk about. I mean, it's been a long talk, I know, and I definitely could not cover everything. So we've talked about our commitment to JVM interoperability. We've talked about namespaces and extensions. In Kotlin, multiple receivers and decorators. We've talked about public-private property type churner operator, immutability in the like classes, and other contributions to Kotlin languages. But it's not all we're looking at. What else we're looking at? We're looking at how we can make syntax for algebraic types in Kotlin more concise. We're looking at various data literals, collection, tuples, etc., whether they can be brought to Kotlin in a consistent way. We're looking even more flexible property syntax because properties are core differentiation Kotlin feature. We're looking at our library authors and how we can enable them, give them features to enable more expressive, easier to maintain, and easier to evolve APIs. We're looking at constant evaluation and folding, which is also really popular in UTrack if you look at it, and more. I mean, we're really exploring different roads on how we can evolve Kotlin in the future, and we're looking at you, our community, and what interests you, what problems you face, which are more important for your use cases. So please contribute, tell us what you need, and thanks for listening to the talk, and have a nice Kotlin.
All right, and we are back, everyone. That was a small look into the future of Kotlin together with Roman, who is also joining us in the studio now. Hi, Roman.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Roman. So thanks for joining us. And before we've got a few minutes, like 4 minutes or so, to ask you some questions before we give way to the big Q&A with everyone else. And we've got a whole bunch of questions that people have been asking in response to your talk. So let's try and see how many we can go through. First one is from Alexandra that says, don't you think that making public the default visibility modifier was a mistake? Shouldn't the default visibility be internal?
No, it's actually a very good decision on part of the original Kotlin design. I mean, time and time shows that most people, when writing code, want to have public as their default. That's what you have in your actual real-life code most of the time. And the default, I mean, for defaults, it's simple. I mean, defaults should be what people use most.
Okay. The next question comes from Nicola. Can we get some more updates on the status of the keep process?
I've actually read this about the talk. I mean, the keep process is a great process in itself. The only problem with that is that we will try to make sure that we have like worked out designs in the keep, and we'll try to move IDEs and stuff like into the UTrack direction. So we'll be doing a bit of cleaning, maybe some close stale ones, or move the issues that are not actual finished proposals, but just some ideas to UTrack, where we can continue discussing until some finished and worked out design emerges, and then we'll have a keep.
But in essence, you could kind of say that you're still keeping it.
Yeah, we're still keeping it. It's definitely going to say a repository that tracks all the language enhancements. So you'll find a history, what's changed, what new stuff was added when, and how it's design documentation for all that stuff.
Okay. Okay, and I'll stop making jokes. Anyway, next question.
Why not? I mean, do you make more jokes? I mean, otherwise it's just boring, boring technical stuff.
Okay, Dimitri says, do you have any plans in the near future to improve exception handling in Kotlin, like multiple catch block or something else?
We actually plan to steer people away from using exceptions as a way to writing them code. I mean, it's something, but we also understand that people have lots of legacy Java code that sometimes abuses exceptions. So we're thinking at how ways to improve interop with this legacy Java code on one side, but on the other side, we don't want to encourage writing exception-heavy code in Kotlin. I mean, we want people to use exception for exceptional cases or for errors bugging their code, but not as a way to sneak multiple return values out of their functions.
Okay, let's try to sneak one more in here. Suresh asks, now Java getting fully featured pattern matching in a couple of releases. The Kotlin 1 block feels a bit inferior compared to Java. Are there any plans to bring better pattern matching to Kotlin?
So that's kind of a bit of a stretch, I'd say. So right now, Kotlin's when expression is way more superior to whatever you have in match, or even what's in prototype in Java. So whenever or if ever Java will have pattern matching, let us say, though, we're definitely keeping track on those discussions in Java. But the really advanced pattern matching in Java is far from being designed at all. I mean, it's definitely not coming in the real close future, because there's only some ideas, not even a side of the worked out design of how it's all going to work in Java. We're keeping track of that. And if Java goes this way, we'll be definitely be looking at how to integrate with that too.
And you've got a couple of questions that have come in through in response to your talk, and I'm going to try and combine two into one. Okay, the first one is kind of saying, how can we extend val class? And the second one is, how would val classes be used from Java code?
So the val class itself is, first of all, it's just an idea now. So I mean, it's an question how you would extend val class is why would you need it? So I mean, we'll have a issue tracker for all classes. We'll create why. So you're welcome to come here and write your use case. Here's my use case for extending val class, and then we'll figure out what to do with that. And for Java, I mean, raw val classes basically give you, they will look at regular classes from Java for now until the project Valhalla is out. Of course, inline val classes, that's the one that we call inline classes now, are not visible as Java, because we'll have to do special compilation trick because Java doesn't support this kind of entity now. I mean, Java is actually working on Project Valhalla, and will ultimately support the concept of value-based inline or primitive classes, whatever the ultimate thing they pick. And at that point, Kotlin will interoperate with this feature. At this point, Kotlin will be able to compile its val classes to Java's primitive classes, or whatever would be the name, and then you will work. But until Java supports it, there's no way you will be able to use it from Java.
Okay. Now, before we move on, let's try to get one more question in from Stepan. He asks, would you like to introduce something like reified generics, but for some kind of inline classes?
I mean, we're looking for your use cases, please. I mean, don't keep us in the dark. Tell us why would you need this.
Okay.
So in essence, we need more information on that one.
Yeah, in essence, it's all we work. I mean, and actually we ask, I mean, if I were to condense my talk into one sentence or two, this is, please, when you write, when you want language to be improved, please don't tell us why you need it, what's your use case, what domain you work in. Give us your use case, what problem you're trying to achieve. That's all we need, because we're working on our own limited use case, we're writing compilers and libraries and stuff like that. The only way for us to see the world around, the problems you are solving, is when you tell us what problem you're stuck with, and then we can together try to figure out a solution that works for your use case and for all the other use cases.
So that's a good point. So in essence, if I'm understanding you correctly, instead of saying, okay, I want you to introduce this language feature, instead say, look, I'm trying to do this, and I think that with this language feature it's the best, but maybe it's not. Do you have any other way to try and accomplish this, right? But
exactly.
Emphasize on the what you're trying to do.
Exactly. Emphasize what, because by combining this multiple what from all these small domains, all of our community working it, then we can come up with a single feature that, instead of being narrowly targeted, be widely addresses many of those use cases that you tell us. And then we can validate that we actually solve your use case, because otherwise, if we don't know a use case, we design something, and how do we validate we solved somebody's problems and nobody told us what their problem was in the first place?
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Roman. We actually have a bunch of other folks here who are waiting backstage, eager to answer all of your questions. So we're going to bring those folks online, and we are going to move over, segue very smoothly, unlike the previous segments, into our big Q&A. So,
are you saying that my segues are not good, Seb?
I don't know. Let's ask Sveta, let's ask Stas, let's ask Anton, Egor, and also Andrei. Hi, everybody.
Hey there. Hey.
How's everyone feeling on the transition so far in the moderation?
My transition has been smooth.
Very good. Okay, we're gonna start off with a small question here. How do you want to take us in?
Yes, thanks for everyone joining. Seb, I know that you've been online with me from the very, what, 4 hours now or so.
Yep.
It's been tiring, I know. So I'm going to let you off the hook and let you start by answering a question. What should be chosen to learn? Should I start learning Kotlin or should I start learning Java as a newcomer?
Oh, it's very good that you specified as a newcomer.
Yes.
Yeah, because if you were just asking me whether you should learn Java or Kotlin, that would be a tough question to answer. I mean, we really see Kotlin being taught as a first language more and more in university courses. We see people starting out with this as low as like 8th or 9th grade. And I think that the language has shown very nicely that it's a great first language. And I think that the language design also makes it very much possible to get started with Kotlin a lot easier than some other languages, which might have certain quirks. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, so that everyone is on the same page, when you say 8th to 9th grade, because I know that varies from country to country, what age are you talking about?
Like 13, 14-year-olds.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, so go on. Next question. What do we have? For who do we have it?
Great. We are moving on with a question for Sveta. Will the Kotlin documents be localized officially in the future development roadmap? And will there be any kind of jargon list? Also, will there be more samples added to the Kotlin documents? Because some syntax explanations are intricate, such as function receivers. Sveta, you want to say something to that?
Yeah, this idea of localizing the documentation it exists for a very long time. And so far there are some ideas, but nothing in the nearest roadmap promised for this year or the nearest time. But of course, we are working on it, and now we have even more folks working on the documentation. They're amazing, so it's work in progress. Improving the documentation is always work in progress. By the way, if you want to contribute to something, feel free to do so. There is this edit button at the top of the doc, so you can add your suggestions there.
Yeah, so in the spirit of Egor's talk, I guess you can give back and contribute to the community here as well. If you think you can explain something better than the official docs, for example, that's a great way to do that.
Absolutely. It's all open source, right? Not just the code, but also the website and the doc. Yep. Okay, Egor, are you there?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. So, Egor, question for you. How will Kotlin in the future help engineers to solve future problems, mainly in science? Do JetBrains have plans on a Kotlin core library for engineering?
Well, we don't plan to implement any new libraries in the nearest future, not only core engineering library, but any other libraries as well. And we plan to focus on stabilizing what we already have. It's really hard to maintain numerous libraries when you have a team of a finite size. So we believe that the best library ecosystem is the one created and maintained by the larger community. So we'll also appreciate your effort in this direction. So feel free to contribute.
Well, maybe on that topic, continuing, I'll throw that question into the room, and whoever wants to answer it can go for it. Which markets would you like to see Kotlin expand into? Someone has to go.
All of them.
All of them.
Good. That's a good answer.
Yeah, we can list a few markets. You know, it's pretty easy. I really want Kotlin to expand a lot with the cloud market. Right, the cloud development is on the rise, and Kotlin should expand together with it. Data science is on the rise, and we should expand together with it. And machine learning as well is on the rise. We should expand together with it, so on and so forth. And I can't really imagine a programming-related market that Kotlin shouldn't expand together with it. Definitely should be everywhere.
I mean, it also is in line with the actual premise of Kotlin, right? When we first started working on it, which is an industrial multi-purpose language, right? I mean, there's no reason for it to not be in any specific field.
Yeah, I should say industrial has been largely redefined since 10 years ago, but still, like the actual premise works.
Yeah, I'll just go with the flow there and just say, yeah, yep, absolutely. I love it. Industry, it now works for us industry. Okay, next question. Okay, first of all, thank you for the excellent work. Egor, this isn't for you. Remember, you don't want compliments. But anyway, thank you for all the excellent work evolving along the Kotlin alongside the community. I have a question that could be considered a feature request. This is not for you, Egor. I would love to see something like cargo in the Kotlin ecosystem and a package manager. Okay, now this turns out it's for me. It's called package-search.jetbrains.com, and it already lists a bunch of libraries that are available not only for Kotlin, but also for Kotlin multi-platform. And there's a tool inside IntelliJ IDEA that allows you to add your dependencies, add your libraries easily, and there's more features coming there. And most likely we're going to have something around the command line interface too. So yeah, that's already in the works. You didn't even need to ping Egor for that one. Okay, so next.
Very smooth. I don't think I can answer this next one, but we'll see. How are you tracking build system stability? Okay, I'm out. For example, when the complex configuration fails in Gradle due to Kotlin compiler concurrency or memory issues, how do you get that tracked? I would throw that to Anton, maybe.
I think usually we rely on real-world use cases, and when some of our users tell us about it, it doesn't work, we'll look on it and fix it. So yes, I think we mostly rely on our community and feedback from it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can probably add a bit here. Currently, we are working on improving the statistics that we collect from our build tooling. And yes, now if you experience some problems, feel free to post a ticket in UTrack and add all the corresponding logs here, because we look through all of these issues and process this information. And I hope that later we will enhance our analytics system to also see such failures there.
Cool. Which is another reason why we need more feedback, and you want that data analytics enabled, right, Egor?
System settings, appearance and behavior, data sharing, and check.
Have you actually memorized this? Like, you literally memorize this. Like,
I should make a tattoo with it.
Oh, there's a poster.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Ashik asks 2 questions related. It says, why is the ternary operator not a Kotlin first feature at all? What made Kotlin's architecture not want to support this? And he adds, it's not the absence that bothers me that much, but it's the why that really still bothers me. So Roman, can we get Kashik to stop being bothered?
Just stop bothered, use the if expression. I mean, and you'll be fine. That's my great advice.
That's it? I'm not letting you go this easily. Like,
just stop worrying about it. That's it.
Don't worry, be happy.
Be happy, yeah. That's very good advice in life.
Okay, you might as well go with the whole Chinese proverb, right? You're not going to be able to change it, so why worry, right? I mean, like, let's just go with that. Okay, fine.
Short and sweet. Next question comes from Keshav. I am new to Kotlin. I'm learning Kotlin from its documentation, and there is a line in Kotlin documentation stating, in Kotlin, everything is an object in the sense that we can call member functions and properties on any variable. I could not wrap my head around this statement, so can you shed some light on it? I'm going to throw this one over to Sveta.
Yeah, it's just a basic premise of object-oriented programming, like everything is an object and you can call members in it.
I feel like that was the exact same phrasing that I just read.
By the way, if you want to learn more basics about Kotlin, there is this book which is called Atomic Kotlin, which covers all these things in a explanatory from scratch way, because in the docs we kind of assume that you're already familiar with with general concepts of object-oriented programming, what a class is, what an object is, and so on and so forth. So if you want to really learn it from scratch, there are many different resources, including Atomic Kotlin. But there
we go.
many
That's
more.
a great answer.
Great, great
do
plug.
you need to know Git to work with Atomic Kotlin?
Let's start with that again, Hadi.
Okay, Andre, I got a question for you. Can big corporations like Google or Oracle influence the future of Kotlin, or the only driving force of Kotlin is the community?
Yes to both, because big corporations are also part of the community. So, like as any member of the community, they can influence Kotlin, and also, well, I don't know if this is what's intended in the question, but big players can influence us in other ways than just asking for features or something. When somebody creates a new platform, for example, or backs a new library, or advocates for a new way of programming or something, it definitely influences the entire ecosystem of programming global and Kotlin as well. So in this way, the more resources you have, the more you can influence such things, and Kotlin will be influenced in turn. But yeah, we're closely working with folks over at Google on things like Jetpack Compose, where the team at Google is working on the UI engine and all this stuff, but it's based on a plugin for the Kotlin compiler. So on our end, we are providing them the API, and this way we are communicating all the time. We are negotiating APIs and so on and so forth. So it's sort of an influence. So we stabilize part of the API to make sure the Compose works. We also understand how impactful this kind of initiative is, and we want it to be delivered to the world as soon as possible. So we're helping. Yeah, so it's definitely an influence. And if somebody else, it doesn't really matter whether you are a big corporation, if somebody else is going to change the world by some groundbreaking technology, and we will be able to help, or we'll be happy to.
Okay.
That was a very thorough, good answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's no follow-up questions coming to that one. I have a question from Jörg. Thank God I got that question, because I don't actually know how to pronounce umlauts. The question goes to Stas, and it is, what is your perspective for the excellent arrow meta libs and extensions? Are you considering adopting keeps from the emerging arrow meta ecosystem? And how close is JetBrains' engagement with 47 Degrees, the developers of Arrow and Arrow Meta?
Yeah, I guess there's two parts about keep and about, well, infrastructure of compiler. About keep, I guess later Roman could answer, and I will answer about infrastructure and
Let's do
stuff.
the split.
Yeah, so basically Arrow is hacking our compiler a lot, and well, we look deep into it and talk with them and well, collect all of the use cases that they have and so on and so forth. And in the future, maybe we will create a good API for Kotlin compilers, so Arrow could be created on top of that, just as the normal plugin without any hacking. So basically, our collaboration right now is regarding plans about such API extension plans and so on.
Okay. Roman, you want to add anything here?
Actually, Stas answered it beautifully. I mean, our goal at the end is to finish this new compiler architecture so that we don't have to implement every feature like every different people need. With the new compiler architecture, I mean, we'll be able to have different compiler plugins for different cases. And that's why it's important that we have those early adopters, early collaborators like Google, Jetpack Compose, Erokhin community that we can work with and figure out what's they need from compiler APIs and figure out what's missing. So that's our actually, it's much better than just taking, keep and bringing it to the language. It's much better to make language extensible. So like you can just add plugin and have the feature you want.
All right.
Okay, next question from Werner Roman. Why to introduce namespaces when we already have the package concept?
Yeah, it's actually just a difference of size. Package is usually something big. You wouldn't create, creating a package maybe for 3 declarations just feels heavy. And sometimes you need just, 3 or a few things that you want to be grouped. And also the difference is like package usually import it all, so you don't see the name. Like I imported list of from Kotlin collections package, so I can just use list of. But for some declarations, like I've given example delegates, or for example in Kotlin coroutines, dispatchers, I want people to always mention the name. I want to code read like delegates dot something, dispatchers dot something. That's the idea of namespace. Something you will always mention, and something it contains if you declarations a different scope. Conceptually, it's the same as package actually, and we're still thinking about naming. So maybe we'll figure out a different name to highlight that it's essentially the same as package, just really small micro package that you just declare in the file.
Oh God! So service and microservice. Yeah, no. So I have a follow-up question to that. If you're saying that, well, it's just a matter of the size of what it is, folks are going to probably want to have some rule of thumb there and say, okay, so where is the borderline? I mean, when should I decide on a namespace? When should I decide on a package?
In this particular case, that will be simple. I'll look at it how you want your users to use it. Like if you want them to use a plain name, like the name itself of the things you do is long and pretty explainable, self-explainable, use a package because people will import it from the package and will just see a short name. If it's something you want to be qualified, like again, delegates.null, dispatchers.default, something.something, like enums, for example, have actually a namespace assigned of them. Actually, Kotlin compiler already knows how to deal with it. It's just not exposed. It's just used in limited circumstances, like for enum entries. So in this case, if you want people to use it in qualified form, you will use a namespace. That's it.
Okay. Well, we're going to completely shift topics 180 degrees again here. And I'm going to ask Sveta, are you planning a Kotlin certification?
We already have Kotlin certification for training companies, which does mean that we can, we have some partners who we cooperate with, who can provide some training on request. So like if you're a team who want to learn Kotlin and you have like, you have specific requests, like whether it's Android or whether you're using Kotlin multi-platform, you can get in touch with us and we'll recommend some of specific our training partners. And for general certification for developers, we don't plan to do it. If you want a certificate, I don't know, you can finish the Kotlin for Java developers Coursera course, and then the Coursera will generate you a certificate, which you can show somewhere, but we don't plan to do anything special from our side.
Yeah, if you want a certificate, just print it out,
Yep, basically. Yeah, but in Coursera course, you still need to do the assignment, so it's like it's not that easy to get it.
Okay, Anton, I got a question for you. Archie Dave asks, hey folks, thanks a lot for the incredible talks. Are you folks planning to create a Groovy to Kotlin code transformation plugin for Gradle, similar to the one you have for Java to Kotlin integrated inside IntelliJ?
Yes, and I even could say that this work is in progress. It's quite a huge task and it's not an easy task. So I think we will we'll probably announce it if after some experiments and tests, it will show the good results. So yes, it's in plans, it's under development, but we can say that it will be done soon. Yeah, it's under progress.
All right.
I just love it when the answer is simple and just like, yes, it's coming. That's all.
Nothing better than a straightforward answer, right?
Ternary operators, are they coming?
No.
Ever?
There we go.
You can always say yes, but very, very slowly, like really slowly. They're not coming in your lifetime.
Well, I have an interesting question for Stas, and the question begins with Hadi, comma. So I'm not entirely sure about this one, but okay. Will the IR backend replace the Java compiler?
Stas, I'll let you answer that one.
Okay. I'm not sure that I get the answer correctly because, well, IR backends is about Kotlin compiler, and we are not compile Java at all. I mean, we do some Java source code annotations, analysis, mostly declarations, but it's the front-end part. So basically, the answer is no, because we do not compile Java even now.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here is the Kotlin IR compiler will replace the Java compiler when Kotlin replaces Java.
Well, yes.
Which won't happen.
All right.
I mean, there's always going to be Java.
But yeah, you can do J2K, convert it to Kotlin, and then compile with new IR. So in that sense, it replaces, you know.
Oh, okay. I thought in the world. Okay, never mind. Right. So, question for Roman, and this one you're going to answer, not me. Will the new Kotlin native multi-threading model be available in Kotlin 1.5? Also, in the same question, another one. Question for Roman. Will the new Kotlin they've written the same question twice. Okay, so what?
Okay. I mean, we're working it. So right now, Kotlin native team is prototyping the new garbage collector so they can leave restrictions of the old memory management scheme, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's too early to tell when. We'll need to have a prototype ready, play with it, and see how it goes. And we'll wait for our roadmap updates. And I mean, as soon as we know the answer ourselves, we'll definitely announce it.
Okay. So this one is for Andre. So are there any plans to implement KT 1.4.8.8, which of course we all know what that is. Apparently that is...
I'm going to open that.
All right. Apparently it is the ability to call super extension functions in descendant classes.
Super extension functions. Oh man, I have no answer.
Why would anyone need it?
Oh, I get it. Yeah. So that's a difficult one. I think we might have something when we figure out the multiple receivers problem, but I'm not sure because the current proposals for multiple receivers are unrelated to that. And if you really need something like that, you have a couple of workarounds. I hope you know what they are. And you're probably stuck with those workarounds for a while.
Okay.
Okay, this is a general question. I don't know anyone can answer this one. You're all from the Kotlin team, ultimately. Kotlin running on the JVM for Android and server side. I want to know if there's any Kotlin VM on which the team is working, which may be faster and better than the JVM.
Ooh.
Kotlin VM.
Well, honestly speaking, it's the definition of what VM is the question. So, but the easier part is the faster and altogether better. It very much depends on the use case, right? So, like Kotlin native is going to be probably faster at startup than the stock JVM, right? And it will compete with Graal on this and so on and so forth. And it has some attributes of a VM. It has a runtime that manages objects, collects garbage, so on and so forth. It doesn't have bytecode. It's AOT compiled, but whether Java native image is still Java VM is a question for anybody to answer. So the answer is yes, if your use case fits.
Okay. I'm just gonna take my turn very quickly with a quick fire question for Roman. Will there be a pipe operator in Kotlin?
I mean, yeah, you can always create an extension called pipe and use it. Like, why would you need operator? I mean, Kotlin is extensible language. So
Wonderful.
Go on, create it for you.
Wonderful. So if you need it, just build it.
Also can write a plugin.
Okay, next question. And this is, I guess, related. This has been asked a couple of times, actually. What is the state with Kotlin scripting? Anyone wants to take that?
Well, I could try to answer this. Well, basically, right now we have different focus areas, so scripting do not have a lot of attention right now. So it's mostly the same as was in 1.3, and well, yeah, that's it, I guess.
Yeah, we have a dedicated person working on Kotlin scripting. He's working on maintaining it, but we don't have any huge plans right now.
Okay.
Cool. Let's see here what else we have. This question goes out to Andre, and it is: did you ever cancel a new feature because the community was against it?
Oh my. Do I even remember that? There was, I think, I remember, off the top of my head, I remember a case when we changed priorities because of that. And there was, at some point, there was a very heated discussion around collection literals, like whether we need square brackets for lists or something like that or not. And then there was like a lot of controversy. That there were some people in favor of it, some people against it. And we looked at it and looked at other things and just went to other things. And we'll be getting back to this question pretty soon, I think. But at that point of time, we changed priorities because of the heated discussion, like not the arguments from either side, but just, okay, it's controversial, let's do something else.
Okay.
I'm going to rephrase that question. Is there any feature that you wish the community had asked for, given pushback so that you wouldn't have?
Oh, yeah. There are many features that, unfortunately, when they were created, the community wasn't that huge, and like there were too few people to push in any direction. But yeah, there are many features I regret.
Okay, well, I think this concludes our huge Q&A, and now here is a quick fire round of some questions around, yeah, just kind of everybody maybe sharing what their favorite part about the Kotlin 1.4 release was. We're starting in the top left here with Anton.
And you can't answer that it's over, okay?
Yes, so the main thing I can say that the programming language is barely imaginable with the tooling that people develop in this language, and as we focused on performance, and we already provided some improvements in its performance, and we saw some very pleasant feedback that yeah, it really started to work better and faster. So for me, personally, it is the best and most noticeable thing that we had in 1.4.
Okay, we're going to continue to my right with Sveta.
I would say that in this release, I'm happy that the whole type inference functionality finally got into the stable version of the language. I think Stas can elaborate on how much effort it costed the team to get there, and it wasn't an easy process. And it's not a feature that you like, oh, I can use it, but it influences the whole story, the whole language, with the choices that you can get with the things that you just get by default with this new algorithm. The whole list of features that was fixed with this is like, it's quite impressive. So, and at some point there was like, it will be fixed in new inference, and now it's finally there. So I'm really happy that it happened.
Okay. Then next, middle left is Stas.
Yeah, as Sveta said, for me personally, it's type inference, definitely, because, well, I started rewriting type inference after 1.0 release. So after that, a lot of people joined me, and it was like 3 or 4 years now. So it's like a lot of work since then.
I think I was writing the documents of how the type inference should be rewritten and before that.
Yeah, so I think, Stas, your whole career in Kotlin is paralleled with type inference, right? As you were basically ascending and getting more and more responsibility, the type inference was closer and closer to stable.
Yes, exactly.
All the more reason to celebrate. Let's continue with Roman.
I mean, there's not much I can add. I mean, I'm so happy type inference in 1.4 is finally out of the door, and it fixes so many bugs in corner cases in Kotlin. It's just incredible amount of work and just great engineering achievement.
Can someone tell trailing commas?
No one has said trailing commas so far.
This is a minor feature. I mean, on functional interfaces, it's nice. But also, by the way, if not for new inference, we couldn't have functional interfaces. I mean, it's not coincidence that 1.4 has new inference stable and functional interfaces, because we couldn't have implemented them other way.
But do not underestimate the love the community has for trailing commas. It blows my mind every time as well.
That's kind of way it shows the power of community. It was not a single person in Kotlin team itself who would care much about them. I don't care much about it. I can write it the way code, but we saw the how much passion people from community, how much people care about training commas from community, that we looked at it and saw it's not much work for us. It doesn't break anything. It brings people happiness. Let's do it. Let's make people happy.
But it also was a couple of very enjoyable design meetings.
Yeah.
Nothing really nasty, grammar stuff. I figured out on the spot. It was great.
Wonderful. Okay, let's continue with Egor.
Okay, I liked 2 things. The first one was how we celebrated the release. Just imagine, Hadi and Seb hosted a private radio show called Kotlin FM just for our team. They streamed our favorite songs, they read some jokes, etc., etc. It was great. And the second thing is what we did with Kotlin multi-platform for mobile. We already had some early adopters at that moment, but what we did was the simplification of the onboarding process for new people. We launched a new a new developer portal, a huge web page with a number of case studies, with lots of documentation, guides, etc. We created a new plugin that simplifies the setup process and the new project creation process. So yes, I'm very proud of what we achieved in this area, and I suggest you to visit Kate Petrova talk on the 3rd day. She will tell more about it.
Yeah, I can also just add that if you're wondering where are all your questions about Kotlin multi-platform mobile that you ask in the chat and everywhere, it's they are all targeted at the 3rd day. So please come there and we'll answer everyone.
I said forbidden word.
No, that was.
There are a lot of questions that are being put off for the other days that they're more relevant. Andre.
Yeah, so actually, I think one of the very important results we got in 1.4 is somewhat of a negative result. We finally invalidated the hypothesis of the Kotlin native memory manager being designed the way it was. So we now are pretty sure that the approach we took before didn't work, and we are working on a new garbage collector. So I think it's a very important result. Although it's not a feature in the release, it was a lot of work put into invalidating this hypothesis, and I'm very happy that we're done there and we're moving on.
So, Well, thank you everyone for your presentations today. I was going to say that it's been a long day, but of course they were all pre-recorded. But it's been a very, very long day that you've come afterwards and you've been answering our questions. Appreciate you being here. So thanks again for also taking part in this QA session, and we'll see some of you in the near future.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So it's just you and me again, Seb.
It's just the two of us.
Just the two.
I missed them already.
We can, no, should I sing? No.
No, we're going to get copyright strike.
Exactly, right? That's why I don't sing, because we're going to get banned from YouTube. Okay, so that was good. It was just over 4 hours. And I haven't actually left my seat. Actually, I have, but my dog is extremely pissed off at me because I kicked her out of the room. She keeps coming and going all the time. So I'm like, well, you're staying out. So she really wants to get back in.
She needs the freedom.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's been more or less good. Well, we don't know. Folks, what do you think? Has it been good? Give us some feedback. Let us know. Tweet us. Tell us it's been awesome. We need to hear it's been awesome. If it's been bad, tell Egor. If it's been good, tell us.
Exactly. And of course, don't forget, for all the talks that you have heard today, we have quiz quest questions. So if you haven't answered them, go back, have another look at the talks, and yeah, try to win some awesome prizes. We're also going to declare a best question for the whole Q&A session by the panelists. We're going to do that offline, and we'll be in touch with the folks who submitted questions, who we can reach.
Absolutely. And Seb, as usual, it's been a pleasure. And I will maybe see you at some point.
It's been an absolute delight. Check out the agenda for tomorrow, everybody. Make sure you submit some questions for the experts that we're going to see tomorrow. Yeah, and apart from that, I think that's it for today.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.